Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
Welcome and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to this Thursday, February 21st, 2013 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This is Joe Hagmann. I will be joined shortly by my co-host Doug Hagmann, who's sleeping right now. No, he's going through an reload of the computer, and it's just taking a while. I want to apologize to everybody for last night. I don't know what happened. I'll wait for my dad to come on to fully explain it, but we had been cut off on our electric supply, not our electricity at the house, but our communication supply. The phone lines and the internet would not work, the dead phone and the cell phones, which was very weird, and it stayed that way until about 11:30, where the house communications were cut off, except the electricity and the cable TV. But the phone lines, the cell phones, as long as you were in the house, and the studio, as long as you're in the studio, got shut down. And for whatever reason, we don't know, but I want to apologize for all those who listened and waited, and usually we come back, but we do have backup systems in place tonight where if that happens, we will be okay. And I just want to say those will continue to be there, those backup systems. We got a lot to get into tonight. 30 million people are in the path of this winter storm named Q. This was the big headline on Drudge when I woke up this morning. And this is from CNN. It says, "Are you bracing for snow?" When she was very young, Kaylee Avery was used to playing in the snow, but a former Boston resident hasn't seen much of it since she moved to Arizona more than a decade ago. But we got a reminder Wednesday. There was a blizzard in Arizona, in Flagstaff, Arizona, in Tucson, Arizona, in the deserts. I saw pictures of gophers out on the golf field, out on the golf course. And there was like 2 inches of snow on the ground. And you can see the cactuses and everything in the background. Just really weird weather. This thing continues to move east, and there is a possible another northeaster storm coming up that could intermingle with it, causing some huge problems. We're still waiting for my father to come on. I'm going to use this time to talk about something really important here. I don't know if you guys heard about this today. There were 2 bombings in India, in Southeast Asia. There were 12 dead and at least 50 or more injured. Police reported that at least 2 blasts occurred minutes apart Thursday evening outside a movie theater near a bus station in the crowded Dil Sakhu area of the southern city. Officials say the bombs were attached to 2 bicycles about 150 meters apart. Now, there are conflicting reports about additional possible 11 to 5 separate bombs that did not go off that are not in this report, but there was definitely a terrorist attack that hit India today. Well, interestingly enough, yesterday, and I'll post this in the chat room, the White House issued a statement of caution to its citizens for terror threats. The United States has issued a worldwide travel alert to its citizens, including in South Asia, where it said terrorist outfits like Al-Qaeda and the Taliban might harm them. This was backed up by the State Department also, who went on to issue the alerts. And also, it talks about, in the last paragraph of this article, terrorists have targeted public places in India frequented by Westerners, including hotels, train stations, markets, cinemas, and mosques. Well, they hit a bus station today. Why did the U.S. issue this alert? They say U.S. citizens are reminded to maintain a high level of vigilance to take appropriate steps to increase their security awareness, the State Department said in a statement yesterday. This article was released by the Times of India on the 20th of February at 1:29 p.m. Well, the attacks happened on the 21st. That happened after the alert. So what did the White House, what did the State Department know that it did not release, aside from the terror alert? I mean, obviously it had some form of knowledge of something going on. And I'm calling you and you're not answering. My dad is hooked up here and he's coming online. I'm calling you right now, and you can just hit join call.
All right. And there we have it. All right, now it's a party, right, folks? Now it's a party.
Yep, now we can start the show.
All right. No, you know the terror attacks you're talking about, all right? There's something very odd about that. We were talking about that earlier today. Look. Well, they warned us, right? They sent out the warning, and then, of course, we had the terror attacks. So, in India. It seems like the template has not been broken, has it? No.
We've seen this similar thing, well, not similar things, but it's more convincing to me that they knew about events taking place before they happened, one being the London terror attacks, where they happened to have the emergency personnel doing drills for bus bombings on the same routes, on the same buses that were bombed that same day while they were doing drills. Same thing with 9/11. FEMA arrived there on September 10th, and they were doing drills, and just so happened to be in place when the terror attacks happened. And those were just two well-known incidents of many that had simultaneous drills running. Even the Sandy Hook shootings, whether real or not, whatever your opinion on that is, they were running active shooter drills in the same state, close to that city, and they did the same thing in Sandy Hook with the same police personnel prior to the shootings.
Right. You know, look, I hopefully our audio is fine. Let me address what happened last night, just very briefly for the people who are joining us now. As Joe said earlier, we've got an office and then a studio, and then the studio office are fed. We have cable television, of course, into the office and then into the studio. So if you can just picture two side-by-side boxes, if you will, and one being an office, one being a studio. But that said, we have hardened all of our lines as best we can. Everything is hardened. We did that specifically for the show. We upgraded numerous things for the purpose of the program, and then we also established redundancies so if we went down, the show wouldn't go down. And I'll tell you something. I've never really quite seen this. We were talking to ourselves for about 5 minutes, not knowing we were down because, well, no one told us we were down. Or actually,
the safeguards that are in place with Skype and BTR. If you go offline during the show, BTR will beep, Skype will beep, the screen will be flashing.
Right.
Well, the clock kept ticking on our show. It let me bring Steve back on the air after the break, which it should, when I pressed the button, it should have not worked.
Well, actually, it didn't. Well, I guess it did.
Well, it showed up on my computer as letting him on air. So what we saw wasn't normal with the way when we do lose contact with Blog Talk or a Skype problem or whatever, an internet problem. It was not the same.
Exactly, and I guess the whole point is this: it's interesting because we have separate lines, and when our hardline phone goes out and our internet goes out, and our various other methods of communicating go out, including cell phones, you got to wonder. We've got three different cell phones in a very small area, and none of them worked. And we're not talking about just the internet portion of the cell phones and the smartphones, but no, we're talking about the signals. So we lost all signals
to come back, were the cell phones for whatever reason.
Yeah, and those were only out for a brief period, enough to keep us in the dark for a while. So it was almost like
for the time for Blog Talk for us not to give a response, so they ended the show because we were going to continue.
Right, but we would have had to, I don't know, send up smoke signals, and apparently they can't see those too well in the dark. But so that's what happened. Now you know what is it nefarious? Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's certainly unusual, and I've never experienced this kind of outage before. No one had an explanation to me for me today. No one could tell me why. No one had any reported any outages in this area.
And we don't know how it all works, but when you have a package deal with your phone, your internet, and cable hooked up into one, which we have in the studio and office, and two out of the three don't work. I've never seen that before. I've seen the cable go out and the phone still work, but when you have such a big problem with phones and your internet, but the cable stays on, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, and we have, believe me, the people might say, well, why do you have cable? Well, it's for a couple of reasons. We need to be we need to be tuned into the news, but also a la carte is more expensive than the package. And I got to be thinking about that, and I'm wondering if that's just not a design by these people. Hey, go ahead and just let the TV suck you in while events take place around you. That don't pay attention to real life events. Let the TV suck you in. And anyway, that's what happened. So, folks, just stand by, because we'll be finishing our conversation that we had yesterday. Trust me on that.
Yeah,
I'm going to
be doing so today.
Yeah, a couple of things. Did you see this, Joe? There were I don't know who the author of this was actually, but somebody put together a list of 20 things about the economy that don't look particularly correct.
No, I haven't seen that.
All right. Well, I've got to tell you, I've just, and I don't know where to find this because this was sent to me, but
I sent you an article also on the future of quantitative easing. So
okay, well, this doesn't look like an article. This looks like somebody put this together personally. But think about this, and these aren't things that you normally hear. So, a couple of things: freight shipments. Their volumes have been, they've hit their lowest level in 2 years. Freight expenditures have actually gone negative for the first time since the last recession, whatever that was. Did you see that?
I saw the stock futures down.
All right.
Yeah. And they say that is an indicator.
Okay. Well,
and that was a one person's opinion that I did read today, but they say when you see stock futures plummet, and also there's been a big change in metals over the last 72 hours, and we see the levels. Last time I looked, they were coming back up a little bit, but this is not. Yeah, the prices. If you hold physical metals, I would not worry.
Oh man, hang on.
What they're going to try to do is get people to sell the metals. I don't know. I don't have TV, so I don't see these anymore. But I don't know. Are they still running commercials to go sell your old gold to these places?
I don't know.
And I'll pose that to the people in chat. Do you, like every other commercial, is it, do you have old gold laying around your house and need extra money? Well, bring it to, blah, blah, blah. We pay good cash. Those were playing forever as the prices of gold continued to rise. And I'd be interested to see how long this metal shortage or the metal price manipulation continues. But this is just paper metal prices that are being manipulated. Once the real physical metal prices or the physical metal, the demand for gold and silver and the purchases of gold and silver are like guns. They're at historic highs. They cannot continue to manipulate, especially silver that is over, 82% to 90% that it is mined is used.
Right.
So they can't continue this path.
Yeah. So when you look at this and you see that everything's upside down and backwards, you know that the only logical explanation, it's not natural. I mean, for the metals to be where they're at, it's not natural. For the for the stock market to be where it's at, it's not natural.
When you see the prices of everything rising, the prices of gas, the prices of milk, the prices of food, all types of food, the what farmers use to feed their animals, the price for seeds continue to rise. When you see things that cost money that are used on an everyday basis continue to rise, as the stock market continues to rise, the dollar is devaluing, and precious metals, the only thing that are really worth anything as far as money is concerned, are devaluing. There is a huge problem.
Well, That, and we also see too that as you mentioned, average price of a gallon of gas risen more than 50 cents a gallon, 50 cents a gallon in the last 2 months. I do remember here when it was 329, and I looked at it and I thought, wow, it came down pretty quick, and then it went back up. It's now 369, making its way to 379. It'll be over $4, I'm sure, at some point in the near future. Obviously, what happens when that happens, everything becomes tougher. It affects our economy because nearly every form of economic activity involves moving people or moving goods around. That requires energy, and of course, that is gas, gasoline, and of course the other sources of energy as well. But we also have consumer confidence in the United States. I can't believe they're still measuring this, but it's the lowest level than it's been in more than a year. Sales of cell phones are down for the first time. More or less people are actually getting cell phones now than in the since the last recession. Again, whenever that was. There's
Plus
talk.
The gold to silver ratio has always been, I don't remember if it's 9-1 or 16-1 historically, but that's way off right now.
Well, yeah.
The gold to silver ratio, there's always been a stable ratio of difference between the prices. Gold was either around 9 times more valuable or 16 times more valuable. I don't remember the number exactly, than silver, always. And that's the way it's always been. But now the ratio is something crazy. And,
yeah, it is crazy. Personally, if I had the opportunity, I would be investing right now in silver, buying silver, physical silver, only because of the low prices that we see. And look, if I had a 401k or a retirement plan, I would not be in it because, I mean, this is just me. Okay, because people send me emails and they say, "What would you do?" Well, I wouldn't be in any stock market or any type of 401k. I would have everything in metals and food and preparations and stuff like that. But and then a couple of months in the bank. You've got to keep a bank account. I don't suppose you have to, but it's good for paying bills and such. But nothing that I'm not prepared to lose. But are you
gonna get into Brennan?
Yeah, I do. I've got a lot of stuff on Brennan, folks.
Before you do that, let's talk about this story first. This is the one out of Las Vegas. I'm sorry, CBS.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'll put this article in the chat room. The title, researchers develop zombie cells that can increase performance after death. Increase performance after death. What do you need increased performance for when your body dies? Well, shouldn't they be developing things to increase performance while you're alive? But anyway, researchers have developed, I'm going to screw this one up, a mammalian zombie cell that can actually function more effectively after dying. By replicating a near-perfect version of a living mammalian cell, University of Mexico researchers have created cells that not only look identical, but are also more apt to survive adverse conditions than living organisms they were modeled after. The Sandina National Laboratories researchers, along with the University of New Mexico, created the cells by placing free-floating mammal cells into a Petri dish and coating them with a salicylic acid solution. For reasons that the study says are still partially unclear, the acid enters and embalms every organic or every cell that there is, and the hardening or the type of preamble armor around the protein in the living cells allows researchers to test them at temperatures and pressures far exceeding those in nature. But I still don't understand what is the use of making something come back to life, or cells coming back to life when the body's dead. Wouldn't it be useless? Unless, I mean, we talk about zombies, the zombie apocalypse, and that is referring to living people. We're not talking about dead people roaming the earth and like we see on the movies. The zombies are really what they consider us to be, as we talked about in a couple shows ago. We are the useless eaters. We are the problem to their solution. When I say they, I mean whatever New World Order, global satanic forces are driving us toward a one world government.
Well, I think it's important. Look, and this is something that I thought long ago was really out there, and in some ways I still don't understand it, but in a lot of ways I still don't understand it. And if you do, folks, great. I mean, God bless you. But the people that we, or that are allegedly the enlightened ones, the Illuminati, the Luciferians, they believe, of course, that they're descendants of from some whatever, I don't know, some perhaps bloodline of Cain or whatever. But the bottom, and by the way, and I didn't know this, I want to verify this, but I saw somewhere today where the word blood is mentioned quite a few times in the Bible, as much as God. I have to
quote here.
I have to really verify that. But if that's true, then it bothers me, but it bothers me in this fashion because there are people out there, and as I said this before, it doesn't matter what we think. It doesn't matter if we think it's crazy. It doesn't matter if we don't believe it.
Blood is mentioned more than any other word in the Bible,
except for God.
That's right. What the person says.
All right, I want to verify that. Because there are people out there who compile statistics about the Bible and how many words and longest and shortest sentences and so on. But like I said, it really doesn't matter what you and I think, folks. It matters what they think, and it matters what they are planning and how. And people say, well, really, why do you really care? Why do you really care to know? Why bother? Well, here's the reason. We need to know what we're fighting against, and if we can find a weakness in their strategy, if we can exploit a weakness in their strategy, we're going to do that. If we can expose something that is demonstrably false, that it's a lie, we're going to do that any way we can. We're not going to go down without a fight. And see, the defeatism too. There's this. We have to get out. We have to get away from this. The defeatism. And I don't want to lecture because there's a lot of news to. Not lecture, but I just don't want to kind of drone on here because there's a lot of news to hit. But it seems like we are in this defeatist attitude. We've got this defeatist mode. But every effort must be made to counteract the efforts of those who preach this defeatism. Because, look, they usually argue that there's nothing that can be done to correct the existing conditions. And they suggest that since the pending fate is inevitable, well, it's no use worrying about. The attitude of the defeatist is like that of the professional rapist who advises his intended victim that because his or her fate is inevitable, she might as well just relax and enjoy it. So, I mean, can you imagine saying that to a victim, realizing that we are victims or potential victims of this globalist agenda? Hey, just relax and enjoy it. I don't think so. So those who claim that there's nothing we can do to escape totalitarianism ignore the fact that God exists and is interested in the destiny of man. And I think people have to realize that. People who are discouraged must be reminded that the only way they can save their immortal souls is to keep on fighting against the forces of evil. That's what we try to do. And thus, by doing so, we give service to God. And anyway, and people, I think, must realize, in my opinion, that they will be judged accordingly, according to their achievements, according to their victories, according to their actions. But, including on the merits of whatever efforts they put into the crusade, if you will, if I'm allowed to say that word on radio. But so that's why I think this is important. So when people say, well, why are you talking about this? Because this is part of what these people believe, that they're enlightened, they're elite, they've got this special DNA, and maybe they do. Maybe they have a special DNA, and that's part of the problem. And if we can expose that, well, then let's do it. But it's to the point now where I think when you start looking at stories like the one Joe went over about zombies, about the experiments in the laboratories out there in Nevada. Oh man, seriously, what are we doing? What are we doing to mankind by doing this? So I just want to point that out, and Steve is going to talk about this as well a little bit more in detail, but that's why it's important. That's why we have to understand, in my view, And that's why, too, when we talk about, for example, the Olympics, well, people see the Olympics as nothing but a show for entertainment. We see it as an incarnation or a spell, or an incarnation, not just not just a ritual. These are people who are trying to convey a message and also putting a incarnation on mankind, on the unwashed masses. You might think, oh well, that's just baloney. You just lost your flippin' mind. And I've had people say that to me. You've lost your mind. You've gone off the rails. Well, now do your own research and then come back. And the other thing too. Now I'm going to switch gears real quick here before we get into Brennan. But Joe, you and I didn't really talk about this yesterday. Of course, we didn't have a chance to. But people better start paying attention to what things are being ordered by the Department of Homeland Security, even beyond the bullets and boxes. We'll say bullets and. Yeah. Did you see the targets?
Yeah, we talked about it.
All right. I'm sorry. There was the show before last we did.
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security providing shooting targets of American people holding guns as like pregnant women, old ladies, young children. They spent $2 million on those. You know that?
I do now. But here's the thing. In case you haven't seen it, InfoWars is running this pretty heavily, or running pretty heavily with it. But, back years ago, you used to have targets like that, a woman holding a baby, not a gun, and you used to try not to hit those targets. And if you did, you failed or were penalized. Now they are conditioning the agents to shoot at pregnant women.
They've been doing that, but now they're making more. It's either come out in the public because of their purchase, but they have been doing urban warfare drills for years, where they have used American citizens, and you can find this through old documentaries online. I think Terror Storm that Alex Jones did was one. There's another good one out there that he didn't do that shows these drills also. But yeah, they are now making targets.
Well, and I think people really need to understand this and be aware of this. When I say understand it, I guess there's really not too much to understand, except to say that this is not a normal process, that people have to really print those out, show other people, and say, look at what's going on here. You still don't believe me? Whack them upside the head. Print them out and whack them upside. Roll them. Print up about 5 copies, or each one of those, and then roll up the paper and smack the person that doesn't understand upside the head with the papers. You're not going to hurt them, but you're going to get their attention. And then hand them the papers and say, look, you get it now? Do you get it now? Because our own security forces, the forces that were created by a Republican administration, if you want to play the Republican-Democrat game, it's George Bush. He's got his signature on that. And so, but there is no Republican-Democrat anymore. It's progressive versus Christian Bible-carrying conservative.
No, it's not. It's not. Progressive.
Good versus evil.
No.
It's just good versus evil, I guess.
There is the political world, and then there is the church and the spiritual world. And I know that in our country we should take part in a political system, especially to better the people. But since we've lost our political system, I mean, it is the Republicans versus the Democrats versus the communists versus the Nazis, pretty much. And they're all bad.
So how is this going to end up? And we've been asked this many times. What's going to happen next? Look, we don't know, but here's the thing: you're looking at a dip in metals. It goes right along. Right now, we're talking right now. You're looking at a dip in the metals. Well, according to Steve Quayle, it's because of the Japanese and Russian buying a lot, and there's price fixing and manipulation. But I was told that once you see a dip in metals, or a significant dip in metals, gold is over 7% now. Then it won't be long before the economy, and specifically the United States dollar, is going to suffer a collapse, or certainly a strain which will not be able to recover from. So that's what we're looking for right now, or looking at. Now, when will this happen? I don't know. Some have said, well, look in the spring. Some have said, well, the spring is just going to be a shot across the bow, but look toward the fall. Whenever this will happen, it's going to happen. It's a mathematical certainty. When I've had people say, well, what can we do about it? Well, in a practical sense, you've got to get your you get food, water, stored up, do all that stuff to the best you can. And by the way, folks, how are you doing with buying that extra can of food at the grocery store, buying a little bit more today? How are you doing with that? Just got to check every day, see how you're doing. But, you also have to be spiritually prepared too, because I think we're going to see some things that we've never thought we'd see in our lifetime. People being hungry, people, mass slaughter in the streets. And I don't want to get too down that road, but I just think that look at what happened with Katrina and magnify that fivefold. And Obama, by the way, this sequestration that's coming, you've heard about that? If you haven't, there's a sequestration coming because of the lack of an economic deal here, a budget deal and an economic deal. And if that happens, you're looking at almost 800,000. I don't want to exaggerate. 800,000 layoffs from the Pentagon. 800,000 civilian employees. They're going to be facing mandatory furloughs if Congress does not do anything and sequestration goes into effect on March 1st. So consider that. Consider what the gutting. And personally, based on everything everything I know from my source, from DHS, as well as my other intelligence sources, they want this to happen. This is a planned takedown of this country. Both sides want this to happen. Think about that. Really? Both sides want. So you're telling me that John Bonnier or some stellar conservative Tea Party member in Congress wants this to happen?
Well, I say,
what are they doing?
They're all compromised. And I don't know if you want to play this audio now or not on Brennan. He does not believe in absolute human rights.
Take a listen to this, folks.
This is Ben Swann. Video he released yesterday from Full Disclosure. Does CIA Director nominee John Brennan not believe in absolute human rights?
John Brennan. He is the man that President Obama has nominated to head the CIA. But what we already know about Brennan and what we're now learning should give some Americans pause. Is it true that John Brennan does not believe in absolute human rights? This is Full Disclosure. In his 1980 thesis at the University of Texas at Austin, John Brennan argued against the idea of absolute human rights. He also argued for censorship on the part of the Egyptian dictatorship, saying, quote, "Since the press can play such an influential role in determining the perception of the masses, I am in favor of some degree of government censorship," Brennan wrote. "Inflammatory articles can provoke mass opposition and possible violence, especially in developing political systems." Now, blogs have been running wild with that statement from 1980, and yet some could make the argument that Brennan has had a change of heart since then. After all, it was written a long time ago. But when you consider what Brennan has been up to as of late, it may stand to correlate to what was said in 1980. Brennan serves as President Obama's White House counterterrorism chief. But he's also the man who's in a very small circle helping to decide which nations, which areas should be targeted for drone strike. Brennan specifically is overseeing the use of lethal U.S. force outside war zones. He now has greater input earlier in the process than ever before, and he makes final recommendations to President Obama about who in specific should be targeted by drone strikes. So here is what Brennan himself has said about these powers. As a matter of international law, the United States is in an armed conflict with al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and associated forces in response to the 9/11 attacks. And we may also use force consistent with our inherent right of national self-defense. The problem with what Brennan says there is how do you correlate the two? That the United States is acting in its own national self-defense while conducting drone strikes on villages that are outside the theater of war in nations like Somalia, Yemen, and Pakistan, where the United States isn't even at war. So what you need to know is that what John Brennan has said in the past is that there can be too much freedom. Combine that with his belief that the public can be swayed by the press, so the press should be controlled and censored to some extent by government, as well as his belief that the right to national self-defense means a small group of people in the White House deciding who can be targeted for assassination and who can't be. Maybe that makes him unqualified to run the Central Intelligence Agency or the CIA. On the other hand, some may say that makes him exactly the right man for the job. We'll let you decide. And that is full disclosure.
And there you go. You're muted. But yeah, John Brennan, the new head of the CIA. If you heard the
not
last
yet, right?
Of that, right?
He has not been confirmed.
Right. I'm sorry. The what do they call it when you're waiting for the position? I can't remember. Anyway,
waiting for the position.
Yeah, he's waiting to be appointed. The appointee. Okay.
Appointee. Yeah.
Of the CIA, head of the CIA, Brennan.
Don't you just love how articulate we are together?
Yeah.
Look, I'm trying to get this.
That's one of many issues where, and the last sentence of Ben Swan said, most would say that this should make him unqualified to be the head of the CIA, but some say it makes him perfectly qualified. Because the lack of humanitarianism, the lack of...
No. Let me tell you why we need to be concerned about this. Folks, please, I urge everyone to go to CanadaFreePress.com and HomelandSecurityUS.com, CanadaFreePress.com, and maybe HomelandSecurityUS.com if they'll let me, if I'll be able to put this up. But here's the deal on. Go to CanadaFreePress.com with respect to John Brennan. Here's the deal with John Brennan. Born September 22nd, 1955, New Jersey. His parents were Irish immigrants. Do we really care? Not really, but it gives you some sort of an idea. Educated at Fordham University, graduated in 1977. Spent time at the University of Texas. He's got a master at Austin, by the way. He has a master's degree in government, 1980. Okay, now here's where it gets dicey.
In government or in corruption?
Master's in government corruption. No. Look, here is where it gets dicey. All right. Did you know, folks, that he spent a couple of years in Egypt during his time in college, and he learned Arabic? He studied at the American University in Cairo, Egypt during his college years. He speaks Arabic, perhaps flawlessly. Now, he's considered right now as a shoo-in for the position of CIA director.
Let's back up. There's nothing wrong with being fluent in any language, but
no, actually, it's an asset.
Right. Right. Okay. I just want to make that clear. Yeah, and you're right. I guess I accentuated on that a little bit too much. But when it ties into what you're going to get into, it is important.
Right, because let me take a sip of coffee here. All right, that's nice. I just spilled it right over my keyboard. All right, look, here's the deal. There's a 4,000-word article. Don't be afraid of its length. That appears on Canada Free Press and HomelandSecurityUS.com about Brennan. Brennan from Barak to Benghazi, and I know where few people really had heard of Benghazi until the hit the fan in Libya, in Benghazi, of course, with the murder of 4 Americans. And for 2 weeks, we were told a lie by Obama, by Clinton, by Susan Rice, by Jay Carney, and by everyone in Washington that some obscure, stupid, amateurish video that was on the internet since, for a long time, was the cause of protests and murder in Benghazi. We were told that. We were said, hey, look, if you don't believe it, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, guess what? It's my contention, I'm going to say this right now, if you look really hard and follow the breadcrumbs of this movie, whose fingerprints do you find on it? Who does this trace back to? It is my professional investigative belief that this movie will trace back to John Brennan. I want you to understand that. I'm saying that flat out based on look, this is an investigative finding that I have come to. That movie, Innocence of Muslims, has CIA. It was paid for by the CIA, by Black Ops money. This is my professional opinion. It has John Brennan's fingerprints all over it. This is my professional investigative opinion. And yet, people are looking at this and saying, well, this is the cause. No, this is a CIA Black Ops. And now, Brennan, let me calm down here. Let me go back a little bit. Brennan, of course, 1980, he did join the CIA as Director of Operations as a trainee. 1981, he joined the CIA's Directorate of Intelligence. So he's been with the CIA since 1981. From 82 to 84, he was a political officer at the U.S. Embassy in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Think about that, really 3 years in Jeddah. Actually spent some time in Riyadh. From 84 to 89, he worked at the Office of Near Eastern and South Asian Analysis in the Director of Intelligence. And from 90 to 92, he was in charge of terrorism analysis and the Director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center. And 94 to 95, he was the CIA's daily intelligence briefer at the White House. Clinton, Oklahoma City. Remember? That's not in my article. I didn't put that in there, but that's Oklahoma City. And I believe it was Brennan, I have to double check this, who was having, well, if I'm not sure, I'm not going to say it, but look at Brennan's actions around the time of the Oklahoma City bombing.
What was he doing?
Well, I'm sure that he had something to do with either Frank Keating or George Tenet during that time. I'm not exactly certain, but just check out his actions around that time, and just do your own research, folks. You'll find some significant issues there. But again, he was the CIA's daily intelligence briefer at the White House for Clinton back in 2 years, 94 to 95, and he was also the director, or the executive assistant to George Tenet, who was the CIA deputy back from 95 to 96. Oh, yes, and then, by the way, he went back to Saudi Arabia from 96 to 99 as the CIA station chief in Riyadh. And then from 99 to 2001, he was, once again, he was Tenet's chief of staff at that time. Maybe it's 9/11/01 where Tenet and Brennan. There's just I'm just going to go with what I know here. But his background, his Homeland Security background, his National Counterterrorism Center background, his president, or him being CEO of the Analysis Corporation from November of 2005 to January of 2009 is significant because during that time, Obama was running for president.
Yeah. And we're going to have Judy Wood on the 26th of this month. And
right.
I think the show before she comes on, we're going to have to, I really want to get into this, the business ties between the Bush administration and people in and around his administration, their business ties with the bin Ladens and Saudi Arabia, because that really, a lot of people don't know about all these connections. And it goes well beyond the Bushes and the bin Ladens, but
of course, yes.
That's something we need to address. So on the day before she comes on, we should really lay out all the information that I have on the business connections from the airline shorting of the airlines on the stock market to the Carlyle Group to the PNAC to all these connections.
All right. Now, let me just say this: about Brennan, he was one that really repeated the story about the video. I think you'll catch a couple of sound bites of him doing that, but he was more in the background. I think he was more of a person that delivers sound bites on the news, but the news goes to get various viewpoints and kind of a talking head kind of person. But the Arabic-speaking John Brennan, who currently serves as Obama's assistant for Homeland Security and Counterterrorism and the choice for CIA, He's, of course, folks, you've heard that he's had his share in the media lately, his share of exposure in the alternative media, especially where a former CIA agent, 12-year veteran of this, or former FBI agent, 12 years as an FBI agent, John Guandolo, alleged Brennan, while working in Saudi Arabia, converted to Islam. Now, again, we know that twice he spent two sectors or two periods of time working in Saudi Arabia. But the time period is 96 to 99. And at that time, he allegedly converted to Islam. And the FBI agent bases that on the fact that Brennan visited Mecca and Medina during the Hajj. And you can't do that unless you're a Muslim. Now, supposedly, there are some people that says, well, you can do it. You have to be invited, and there also have to be other conditions. But to even do that during the Hajj certainly sets off alarm bells for me. So a lot of people in the alternative media are saying, hey, we have a Muslim CIA agent to be. Well, possibly, but is that the worst of the bad news? I don't think so, because beyond that alleged conversion to Islam, his other actions are much more troubling as they relate to his past. And I'm going to tell you right now, his stance on Benghazi, his stance on drone warfare, his involvement with the administrative kill list. Well, when you put all that together, certainly those are reasons why I believe that he should not be our top spy or head of the CIA. But there's another reason. There's a couple other reasons. One reason is a dead young man in Washington, D.C., one bullet hole to his head in his car in front of a church.
The passport break-in.
That's right. And here's the deal with this. Based on the investigation that I performed, all the research I performed, John Brennan was head of the Analysis Corporation, as I had mentioned earlier. Now, during Obama, while he was running for the presidency of the United States, 3 times, there were 3 separate occasions when the passport office was experienced break-ins. Once in January of 2008, once in February, and the next time in March of 2008. The story first broke by the Washington Times on Thursday, March 20th, 2008, but the article really, the story really hit on the 22nd of March. Now, at that time, according to State Department spokesman Sean McCormick, there were 3 people that were behind this break-in. This virtual break-in. I don't want people to think that windows were broken and somebody called through a window, but it was a virtual break-in of files. Well, what was taken? No one knows. Could it be that, well, the official narrative here, the official story is that the people were just curious. They wanted to see Obama's and Clinton's and McCain's personal information. Well, that might be true, except for the fact that these 3 individuals, 2 members of Stanley Incorporated, a firm that employed 2 suspects, like I said, and the Analysis Corporation, the corporation that was headed by John Brennan, they employed 1 suspect. You know what? Before I go any further, let me just note this: Stanley Incorporated was awarded a $164 million government contract to do what? To print U.S. passports. And you would think that we'd learn a lesson, but guess what? Despite the security breach, Stanley Incorporated, well, they announced in March of 2008 that they were awarded yet another 5-year, $570 million contract to do what? Continue to support a passport office by furnishing passports for the U.S. Department of State, the Bureau of Consular Affairs Passport Services Directorate. Go figure. Anyway, the Analysis Corporation is based in McLean, Virginia, and the Stanley Incorporated, of course, is not too far from there either. And they both serve the government. Now, as I said, the Analysis Corporation was owned and operated by John Brennan from 2005 to 2009. 2008 is when the passport office break-in occurred. Brennan also served as a close advisor to Obama in 2008 during his campaign on matters of intelligence and foreign policy. Of course, this is after 25 years in the CIA. He also worked for his campaign and also contributed money to his campaign. But, information about the passport office file break-in, that's kind of information there's fallen into a black hole. But here's the deal. On April 8th, 2008, Obama finally admitted for the first time ever in any public venue as a presidential candidate that he traveled to Pakistan in 1981. Remember that flop that happened back in during his campaign, where he traveled to Pakistan when he was in college, or around that time, 1981, and everyone was saying, "Well, that's impossible. He couldn't have. He weren't allowed to." Well, do you realize that was the first time ever that Obama actually admitted that he traveled to Pakistan? And why? Well, could it be because he was just told earlier that week that, hey, your files have been breached? Your passport files containing your travel itinerary has been breached? Well, we think so. I think so. Even ABC News mentioned that they were surprised at this unexpected revelation that just suddenly happened, that rolled from the lips of Obama on April 8th, 2008. Out of nowhere. It's kind of like somebody with Tourette's saying, hey, I traveled to Pakistan in 1981. Yeah. Okay, now, here's where it gets kind of cloudy. After the break-in, after the breach, and the news reported this, that one of the State Department employees colluded with one of the three suspects in stealing credit information of value that you could actually create identities, or steal someone's identity. I shouldn't say create, but steal their identities. And I'm not talking about Obama, because other files were in there as well, lesser known people. I mean, at that time, you couldn't go to Best Buy and use a fraudulent identity, say your name was Barack Hussein Obama, and buy a big screen TV, right? So, but other people were in there. And as the D.C. police and the other investigators were looking at this, they identified one person by the name of Lieutenant Quarles Harris Jr. Now, lieutenant is not a rank. It is just a name. All right, whatever. But folks, I'm sorry about that. I'm looking here at my computer screen, and then I got Joe on all fours next to me. I was just wondering what that was about.
I was seeing about your USB plug-in because the audio is getting a little choppy, but it seems it's not bad. I don't even know if the audience can hear it, but I was just wondering if it was plugged into the right outlet.
Well, see, that's the nice part of being a dad. I got a son that takes care of me and makes sure I have my plugs in properly. Of course, he's got to, because I mute myself all the time without really intending to do so. But here's the deal. At the time the passport office records were breached, Brennan was in a position to oversee the employee that was suspected of breaking into the passport office. Now, I'm not going to have a lot of time to get into this. You're going to have to go to CanadaFreePress.com, unless my site comes up, or even, go to CanadaFreePress.com to read the article. And I want to thank Judy and Brian for posting this. But also in HomelandSecurityUS.com, as soon as my site comes back up, I don't know what happened to it. I'm sure it's just a minor glitch, like everything else. It looks like Harris, according to what I could come up with. I was able to verify that Harris was the intended recipient of stolen credit card information from a State Department employee.
Yeah. And
all right. Go ahead.
I just want to let you know we have a couple minutes left till the top of the hour, but on the appointments, we got Kerry as Secretary of Defense. They're trying to put Hagel in and Brennan in, and these people, even John Kerry, member of the CFR, Hagel, anti-Israeli, Brennan, obviously pro-administration, different agendas that are damaging to the U.S. It seems all these appointments have agendas that are damaging to the U.S.
Well, the question I have is, now, thank you. Let me just go back to Brennan here, though. April 17th, 2008, a day before he was going to meet with investigators to eke out a deal and to spill his guts and spill the beans about who he got this information from, he was found shot to death in front of the Judah House Baptist Praise Baptist Church in the northeast section of Washington, shot once in the head. It's a murder that remains unsolved 5 years this April, and no justice for that victim has been found. And police say, well, it could be a drug deal gone bad. Timing is rather interesting, don't you think? Well, okay, well, does this make Brennan, is Brennan involved in this? Well, I don't know. Let's look at this real quick. 2012, Innocence of Muslims Explained. And again, I direct you to the article or the report that I wrote. That's up tonight.
Is our site down, or is it?
Yeah, well, like I said, I believe our site is down, and I don't. It's just one thing after another, folks.
But CFP has the article up, and I posted in the chat room.
And what happens sometimes too is they do perform maintenance now and again. So just hold on. Don't worry. Our site will come back up here shortly, I'm sure. But the Innocence of Muslims, I compare it to the bloody glove at Rockingham. And that's a reference made to, of course, the infamous O.J. Simpson murder trial, where a critical piece of evidence was found. But anyway, the four Americans dead in Benghazi. Well, I believe that the video, based on the investigation I found, the video is the Achilles heel that serves to expose this cover-up that is Benghazi. The video can, as I said earlier, everyone from Washington was blaming the video. Hillary Clinton got on the TV and blamed the video. In fact, in Pakistan, blamed the video. But it's my belief, as a professional investigator, having investigated this, having looked at the digital fingerprints of this film, of this video, this made-to-order production. It was by orders from and payment by our own intelligence community. The alleged producer of the video, publicly identified as Nukula Basili Nukula, is associated with an individual known as Salama, and he's the cousin of Walid Shobat. Now, Walid Shobat's a man very well known in counterterrorism circles. That happens to be his cousin. Yeah, that's a small world. Okay, but here's the thing. If you look at the digital fingerprints, at who uploaded this video, at how long the video was up, how it got so widespread so quickly, and in so many places in the Middle East, it takes you to a gentleman in Egypt. Do you think that somebody could have had contacts in Egypt? Do you think someone like Brennan could have had contacts in Egypt? Many people, of course, could have. But don't forget, Brennan was in Egypt, studied at the University of Cairo, and in addition, was in a position through his CIA contacts to have contacts everywhere. But this TV producer, or this TV talk show host, kind of like a Piers Morgan, cross between Piers Morgan and Jerry Springer for Islam, he decided on September 9th of 2012 to air portions of this video, but air them again and again and again. He just somehow found this video on the internet without even, when only 77 people before him had found that video. Out of all places, this TV station host in Egypt found this video with, at that time, I believe 77 views. And if you look at how the video was uploaded to the internet, who uploaded it, can you believe that the IP addresses, the block of IP addresses, traces to Stanley Incorporated? And not only that, but there's a crossover between Stanley and the Analysis Corporation. So do you think that this could have been a CIA operation from the very get-go? Look at the digital fingerprints. And as investigators, we always hold a few things back. So if John Brennan, if you're listening, and you want to challenge this, go ahead. Because discovery is a really big issue here, and discovery would be really interesting. But the bottom line is, we contend that John Brennan had his hands in the. I'm not going to say that. Well, I'll say that he had his hands in the production of the movie. But see, why was that movie so amateurish? Because when you deal with con artists, they're people that have been convicted in courts, in federal courts, for stealing $1 million or defrauding banks of $1 million, which Salome was convicted of, and Nasula was convicted of criminal behavior, criminal conduct. Sometimes you get defrauded too. So it was an embarrassment, perhaps, for the CIA to admit this, but you know what? They needed something in a hurry, so they pulled this off the ready-made shelves of things to lead off with and pointed to it. But the traces go back to our own intelligence community. That's troubling. And one last thing about this, because I know we're short on time. Look at the 113-page thesis of John Brennan from his college days. You can search this. It's called Human Rights, a Case Study of Egypt. It's 113 pages, like I said. I read the thesis twice, and yes, my eyes are bleeding, but the fact of the matter is this. The thesis, in his thesis, he argues that too much freedom of speech, too much freedom is a bad thing, and he uses Egypt as an example. Egypt, 1980 Egypt, not 2012 or 2013 Egypt. So what would his thoughts be about America today? What are his thoughts about America today from an intellectual academic point of view? Look at his 113-page thesis. Again, censorship is a good thing, especially when it's done for political purposes. It's right in the 113 pages. And when you put it all together, is it reasonable for us to wonder if we might have enemies in the gate already? Of course we do. Do we know them? Do we trust them? Of course we can't. So are there legitimate reasons for Brennan to argue against Brennan? Folks should tell me. CanadaFreePress.com. I'm going to be right back after this. I know.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilida Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Hold on to your seat. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
Yeah, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this hour of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're very pleased to have with us Mr. Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com, and, of course, his news site, Genesis6Giants.com. Did I say that right, Steve?
Yeah, you did, Doug, and I'd like everyone to go there tonight and see the 6-taloned paw print that was in a recent newspaper just in the last couple days that someone found on their window. And it's not a bear claw. It's not anything earthly that you could even attribute to any known beast. Now, why this is critical to what we're going to talk about tonight is in going into hour 2, which we would have gone into last night, everyone's paradigm of science is going to change. And the history of mankind is going to be so abruptly distorted by the revelation of the alien disclosure, which Tom Horn and Chris Putnam were talking about, that I've written about in my book, Aliens and Fallen Angels. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, again, the book Aliens and Fallen Angels really helps the average Christian pastor or elders to understand the whole, if you will, overview from a very linear, and that was an amazing feat by the grace of God, a linear fashion where they can follow the whole thing and not give people stupid answers when they come literally looking for the truth. For instance, someone who is seeing flying saucers or seeing unidentified flying objects or is basically seeing the things that go bump in the night, there are answers for those people. Obviously, God is so much in love with His creation, those who are redeemed, who have accepted His pardon through the blood of Jesus, that He gives us such amazing revelation. Yet people would just as soon, quote, stay in the dark, pun intended, as to come into the light and see that there is a victory. You know, Doug, one of the things that's lost on modern-day Christendom is the word overcomers. Jesus specifically talks about those being given crowns who overcome. And Revelation, the book of Revelation, talks about we overcome the power of hell by the blood of the Lamb, the word of our testimony, and we love not our lives unto death. The point is that the devil holds most men and all mankind pretty much in a form of fearful bondage, especially about death. But the fact is, Jesus, didn't say that the resurrection was a process. He said He is the resurrection, the truth, the way, and the life. So the point is that we're going to talk about stuff tonight that I really wanted to get to last night. So everybody that's flying around ready to zap us, you can relax. Nothing's going to go out tonight that outside of maybe you guys learning something, and I think we all know who I'm talking to. Now, what I want to go into is when I started talking, Doug, years ago and writing Genetic Armageddon and Aliens and Fallen Angels, most people simply cannot and could not at that point embrace the fact that yesterday's mythological monsters and legends were far from being just somebody who basically went back in a time machine, who was a writer of science fiction for Hollywood and just made all this stuff up. There are so many eyewitness accounts, and I've spent 40 years of my life running down, tracking down, interviewing, and digging through so much stuff that sometimes it can be a little bewildering. But what I've asked the Lord to do is help me to explain and to use the topical matters that He brings, the historic matters that He brings, the spiritual revelation He brings, and then the eyewitnesses. For instance, tonight I'd like to get into the story that I covered just briefly, I think, when Tom and I were on your show together a couple of weeks ago. Wanted, adventurous woman to give birth to Neanderthal man. Harvard professor seeks mother for cloned cave baby. Well, first of all, there's been a history of Neanderthals in especially modern anthropology, and I'll talk about two words, modern anthropology versus revised anthropology. The Neanderthals were in, if you will, the human genome as it evolved, which was only proven to be a total lie. And I'm here to tell you that all of evolution is a total lie. And the thing is that the people who are even creationists will have to at some point come to the realization and actualization that the things that antiquity recorded in the Bible and some of the pseudepigraphal works and for instance, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And ladies and gentlemen, the Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest known poetic narrative of fallen angels and demigods, half angels, half men, and the monsters that Gilgamesh basically conquered. And it's from 12 tablets from Uruk, U-R-U-K, or some people pronounce it Uruk. The point is that, and happens to be in Babylon, which happens to be in Iraq, therefore you get the word Uruk or Uruk versus modern-day Iraq. But the point that's interesting, Doug, is the Epic of Gilgamesh was basically only thought to be fantasy until about, I think, 15 years ago. The BBC carried this story, the British Broadcasting Corporation carried this story, that Gilgamesh's tomb had been uncovered. And I can tell you from, again, eyewitness testimony to me, given by a very high-ranking background source military, and his men and the women that work for him, they secure this stuff. The bottom line is Gilgamesh is not just a fictional character. He was a real entity, just as Nimrod was, just as some of the giant pictures you see on my website, Genesis6Giants.com. When you get sarcophaguses that are anyway stone coffins that can be anywhere from 13 to 18 feet long, and the placement of those coffins throughout the world and the eyewitness testimony going along with it, the point that most people don't understand is that the truth of history has been kept from the people who inhabit history to control them. And that's why when we started talking about, a certain subject matter last night about the bloodlines, etc., somebody sent a message saying, don't go there. Well, just for the record, I think Hawk went there in its entirety on his show, an hour or so ago. So it's up on my website under Q Alerts. I'd encourage you to read that because, again, it's important for people to understand that you really have two seeds. From the book of Genesis, you have God's seed and you have the serpent's seed, and they're going to be at war. There's going to be enmity, and as much as Christians want to placate and lay down and have a group hug and sing Kumbaya, and strum around a fireplace with, their combination idolatry, meaning they think somehow that you can drink the cup of devils and drink the cup of the Lord. And Paul says in Corinthians, you can't do that. That's what's happening now in modern-day Christendom. So what I'm trying to get people to understand is that there is a history out there. And just as Daniel the prophet was told by the angel of the Lord, Michael, to seal up the prophecies yet for the appointed time, and the information that knowledge would explode, yet there was a time seal. There was a sequence of events. It was a process that had to take place before all these things would be revealed. I find it more than interesting that having, I would say this, led the foray, F-O-R-A-Y, into these subject matters long before most people even would acknowledge them because they were concerned with politically, and actually many of them told me this, well, I'd like to talk about what you talked about, Steve, but it would hurt our financial base. I said, well, you might be surprised. There might be more people that would be willing to support you if you tell the truth instead of some of the stuff you think you're feeding the sheep, and all you're doing is preparing them for slaughter. And I won't give names, but I'm talking about some pretty well-known ministries. So the thing is that we're now in a time period, Doug, unlike any other. And again, I don't know any better way to say it than Jesus said it. And he has indelibly imprinted it in my spirit, literally, that not only just as in the days of Noah, so shall the days prior to the coming of the Son of Man be, but the thing is that we're going to live in a time unlike any other in history, because we have the knowledge of salvation. Those of us who have been born from the birth of Jesus forward have the ability to either say yes or no to God's answer to mankind's sin. Now again, hell was not prepared initially for mankind. It was prepared for the devil and his angels. It's interesting, just a little word of aside, kind of a revelation in the last 6 months, and I don't know if I've ever said this on your show. If I have, it needs to be restated, is that the Scripture talks about God's angels being ministers of fire. It talks about the angel of the Lord as coming so many times, and even in the book of Acts, where God baptizes the first century Christians in the Holy Spirit with cloven tongues of fire, it's interesting that the hell was basically is a plasma furnace, if you want, and the angels were made out of the fire versus us being made out of the dirt. And basically, when the Word of God says ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and that when you go to the first chapter of Genesis and you start to see the creative process all the way through to the forming of man, it's interesting to note that we go back to dust, but when we're redeemed, that the soul, if you will, the spirit, not soul, the spirit of the righteous goeth up, but the soul of the wicked goeth down, and that has to do with gravity. And I mean, there's no way to contain that temperature known to mankind except in a plasma furnace. And guess what? It takes magnetism to contain that superheated, if you will, the fires or the plasma of hell. Isn't that kind of an interesting thing? So the Word of God is so sharp, it's sharper than any two-edged sword. And so what we're trying to do tonight is cut through a lot of the fluff where most people wouldn't believe that there's more evidence confirming the stuff that we're talking about than there is against it. Just because somebody will get on the boards and he's a shill for some cyber warrior command in, Northcom or CENTCOM or, DIA, Defense Intelligence or whoever, the bottom line is that what they all count on is they use a statement by, I believe it was Goering, the head of Hitler's Luftwaffe, or one of the two, either him or Goebbels, that made the statement, it's a good thing for us that people don't think. And so what I'm trying to do tonight is get people to think and be provoked to searching out the Scriptures. And everything that I do, Doug, in research is based on the book of Genesis. That's how God launched me. And for those of you that want to have an amazing scriptural foundation and understanding, I would encourage you to go to DerekPrince.org. Derek has gone to be with the Lord, but he has a spiritual conflict series. Derek Prince, D-E-R-E-K, Prince.org, and he's got a spiritual conflicts series that is so mind-boggling and mind-blowing, and you can't argue with his credentials. Oxford-trained, not only theologian, but he was trained in Greek and Hebrew and Latin, and it's pretty tough to find somebody that has that kind of training anymore, especially in the youth, because, again, the thing that's fascinating is the men of God who can actually strove for the faith, the prices they paid to bring us what we have, and then I can't say that that way, the pathetic and poor way we've handled the truth as a nation that has been blessed beyond all, and as a, if you will, a fellowship of believers, I'll use that word, that are supposedly having God's great redemption in common, we have abdicated our position, we have become apathetic, indifferent, and we basically no longer know what it means to contend for the faith. Having said that, I'm encouraged, Doug, when I got an email from a single dad. He tells me his 11-year-old and 14-year-old sons listen to every word that's spoken, and they absolutely get this. I have some friends. I have some kids that listen to this show that are as bright as the children can be, and their parents, God bless them, have taught their kids what's coming down. And these kids are not fearful. Man, some of them are ready to go out and take on dragons, and I'm telling you, they're walking the faith to do that. Having said that, tonight I want to give a historic overview of the things that most people don't realize are not the imaginations or a peyote high or some mushroom high from a bunch of natives in the jungles. You're talking about kings and kingdoms. You're talking about every major kingdom and every major ethnic world group that has had encounters with things that we would call our supernatural monsters or demons or devils, you name it, they've had encounters with them. And so as I was researching, and by the way, in my new book called True Legends, okay, I don't have the subtitle yet worked out. I may have Native. I may change it to Native American Tales from the Land of the Plumed Serpent. Just so you know, South America and North America, even the word America means land of the plumed serpent. If you go to Aztec mythology, Quetzalcoatl, if you go to Mayan history, Viracocha, in other words, when you go to all the pyramids, those who are pyramid builders, you go to the mounds, the serpent mounds. You can't get away from the serpent mounds. And just if you want something that will make the alert that I posted, that Hawk read and that Doug and I were talking about last night when his phone lines, computer lines, and everything was attacked, just type in serpent mounds, because the word serpent is as old a word as I can find in the world of derivations and the beginning of all words. In other words, when you go to the root word or you go to the root language, when you come up with the specific etymological usage of a word and start to investigate it, it's amazing because, and I'm going to go for a pun here, it's as old as the serpent in the Garden of Eden. That's where the word serpent even came into being. When you get into the Old Testament, you're talking about the book of Job, which is the oldest book in the Old Testament, and Job is talking about Behemoth and Leviathan, and God is putting questions to Job that obviously Job could not answer because only God himself knew the answers to some of the questions. I often said, if the Lord ever put me in that position, I'd just chicken out immediately, Doug, and say, Lord, you know the answer to that question. I don't unless you reveal it to me, you know? And obviously God was speaking rhetorically to Job, but tonight we want to speak literally and cover the things that are really important for people to understand. Because again, when you're talking about Bigfoot and you're talking about some of the around the world, by the way, Bigfoot has so many different names. There's over 200 different names for Bigfoot in the United States of America, going back at least 1,100 years just in the North American, if you will, folklore. And the Native American tales of encounters, even in the last several weeks that I'm getting, are overwhelming. I will be incorporating a lot of eyewitness testimony, and this isn't the flaky stuff you see on TV. This is guys who are living in some of the most, if you will, geomagnetically charged areas of the world. And for those of you that are unfamiliar with ley lines, you need to look it up, Leylines, and I'm not going to go into it tonight, but it seems like where the Bigfoot appears or may disappear through whatever portals, when you start to chart the encounters with some of these things, or not only the encounters, meaning the eyewitness testimony. For instance, most people would not realize that there are dozens and dozens of actual accounts in Pacific Northwest newspapers of everybody from miners to railroad engineers and railroad workers running into big feet and killing them. There also is no Harry and the Henderson history of big feet. You go into the Algonquin and Iroquois Indians and their legends. I mean, these things are cannibals. So tonight I want to kind of get into it because I'm going to quote a lady named Mira Shackley. The wild man in various manifestation forms a part of the culture and mythology of almost every society since records began. Now, for those of you that have never read the Epic of Gilgamesh, if you will read the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's on my website, Genesis6Giants.com. The front page will come up, and then you'll see the nav bar above the front page where the hot headlines are. And before you go to the Epic of Gilgamesh, go look at that six-clawed paw and tell me that doesn't give you a sense, because it's right out of a newspaper, again, within the last several weeks. So, you know, the Epic of Gilgamesh will give you an understanding. Now, Gilgamesh was what we would call, from last night's pre-interrupted time period, Gilgamesh would be considered a Rephaim. He was a giant. He was the, if you will, the progeny of angels and earth women. And he was a king and a mighty king, and he was a, if you will, he was a larger-than-life figure because he was larger than life. And what's important for people to understand is no matter how big you think Adam and Eve might have been, there are people that want to claim Adam and Eve were 12 and 9 feet tall. In all of my studies over 4 decades, I guess I'm starting now into the 5th, there has never been anything to suggest that, because as Joe read the other night, when Joshua and Caleb went into the Promised Land, and they brought back the report. They were the only two that brought back a good report. All the rest of the guys said, we're not going in there because the land is filled with giants and it devours its inhabitants. It may be flowing milk and honey, but it's also flowing with, entities that eat little people. So the thing that's fascinating to me is that now there's a movie coming out, and I'm jumping around a little bit, and I'm going to stick with Bigfoot and get back to it. But Jack the Giant Killer, for most people, they would be hard-pressed unless they've read my stuff and listened to me over these years on Coast to Coast to even put it together. For instance, the city of London, which is known as a city within a city, it has two giants that founded it. And guess what their names were? Gog and Magog, okay? Interesting, huh? Now, we all know the word Gog and Magog from Ezekiel 36, but most people cannot reference the fact that Gog and Magog, and they're the patron saints. Once a year, they have a parade in the City of London. The City of London is like the Vatican. It has its own rules. And while it's technically in the British Isles, it is, what somebody said, the financial center of the universe. They attribute their origin to two giants, Gog and Magog. You can go and look it up on Wikipedia. Getting back to Bigfoot now, why is this critical? It is my contention, Doug, that now we're seeing so many, if you will, legendary beasts, legendary monsters. We're seeing the demons, we're seeing the devils, we're seeing all different manifestations of evil that God in His mercy had held back and kept back, whether He bound them in everlasting chains or they will go into everlasting chains. The point is that those things are being released by men who once were given dominion by the living God, who have turned, if you will, to the dark side and now serve Lucifer. And that's what basically the thing that we were talking about last night, that we were talking about on the air, that's what got somebody pretty nervous, okay? So when I go through, and I can't even pronounce all of these, but I'm going to give you probably the top 50 names for Bigfoot from the top 50 tribes of Native American tribes. This is pretty interesting, okay? Because the Tshimian Indians, they call them just simply the cannibal. The Zunis knew the Bigfoot as a cannibal demon. The Bella Indians called him the Bushman. And it's fascinating to me that the Kwakawa, and that's really doing them no great service, but the wild men of the woods. The Dakota Sioux called him their big elder brother. The Lakota Sioux called him their big elder brother. The Wenatchee Indians called him the night people. It's interesting, the Seminole Indians called him the tall man. The Iroquois and the Seneca Indians called him the stone giants. The Iroquois called them, they called them the stone giants or the stone coats. And what's fascinating, they have such interesting, the Quinault, Quinault Indians called them the dangerous being. The Plains Indians called them the tricksters. The Cherokee called them the hairy savage. The Tlingit, Tlingit Indians called him the otter man. The Hari Indians called him the bushman. The Karok Indians called him the giant. The Menominee Indians called him the giants. And listen to this. This is really interesting. The Lenni Lenache Indians called him the masked being. They also called him the living solid face. So you go on. The tree men, or men who are as tall as trees. How about this one? The Hoopa Indians called him Big Boss of the Woods. They probably got that understanding who ruled the roost. Fascinating when you go to the Salish or Salish Indians, Sasquatch, Wild Man of the Woods. But this is interesting. The Spokane Indians, from which the city is named after, tall burnt hair. Some of the Yakima and the Puyallup tribes call them the Stick Indian. The coastal Salish Indians called him one who runs and hides. The Chinook Indians called him the evil god of the woods. Again, the devil of the forest, the unknown. The Okanagan Indians called him Owl Woman. And that's really important to Native American culture and Native American legends because Big Owl is basically another word for Bigfoot. Yakima, also spirit hidden by the woods. spirit spear, and it goes on and on and on. I think I've given everybody enough. And I mean, and in my book, I'll go through every name I've been able to find. But the Eastern Athabascan Indians knew exactly. I think they gave the best definition of all: the wicked cannibal. Because as I go into, and as my research partner and it goes into the stuff with the Navajo, it's interesting what they're talking about. And by the way, he sent me an email, and I'm going to post it just to show people that somebody he knows, I think I referred to this, has taken a couple shots at him, and the thing just stopped in its track. Its glowing red eyes went to a hot red glow, and then just kind of grunted and ran off. And the speed at which these things move is fascinating, because based on all of the legends of these things, they're moving at some place close to 40 to 45 miles an hour. Same thing as a buffalo. So I'll be posting pretty soon as we get closer to getting the publication, the front cover of my book, which is when I hired Brian Snowdy, who, in my opinion, is one of the best sketch artists and truly talented men in the world. When I put the legends of the Indians to him, if you go on my website, you'll see the six-footed Indian, six-finger, six-toed Indian who's got to be close to 14, 16 feet tall, grabbing a buffalo under their arms. Well, buffaloes can hit 40, 45 miles an hour within a few steps. If you've ever been to Yellowstone Park and watched them when they get spooked, you wouldn't want to be very far away. Forgive me, you wouldn't want to be very close. You want to be very far away, because those things move quicker than you can. You can even imagine. So, well, we see the headlines on Mail Online: wanted adventurous woman to give birth to Neanderthal man. People typically ask me, do you believe that Bigfoot was a genetic alteration or a separate and distinct life form from mankind? And my answer to that is absolutely. Because the history of the world predates even the modern and contemporary, if you will, mindset to even go to, quote, the Neanderthals. When I asked one time a certain man that fights this stuff that goes bump in the night, I said, so how many different species of this stuff do you guys have to deal with? And he asked me a question. He said, how many species of insects are there? And I said, well, look, I mean, hundreds of thousands. He said, that's the way it is in that world. Now,
Wow.
look, I would have thought, maybe there's a half a dozen. You've got cobra, you've got this, you've got that, maybe 100, but a couple 100,000. I asked him the same thing about aliens, meaning not, again, when I speak aliens, always assume I'm talking what I call extra-dimensionals. I do not call them extraterrestrials, I call them extra-dimensionals. Because when you're dealing with stargates, and this is an answer that I'd like to give to someone who sent me an email today, asked me a question, well, how do these things come and go, and where do they hide, and where are the giants now, and where do the fallen angels, all those different questions, if you understand what a stargate or a portal is, or what the Native Americans spent massive amounts of time telling in their oral tradition, in their legends, and when you see that almost every culture in the world that portrays a stargate does it as a spiral, just kind of a spiral, a two-dimensional spiral on a rock or engraved in something, you begin to understand that this thing is much bigger than most people want to give it credit for. So as HAARP, let's talk about High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project. And as I told people, it's fascinating to me that there are 72 ionospheric heaters worldwide, and I won't go into demonology, but I will explain something. There are 72 goetic, G-O-E-T-I-C demons, and those demons, and you can just call them, I always remember them, gate demons, and so somebody's working awful hard to coordinate the loosing of those things which have been bound by the living God for the benefit and safety of his people. Now, I want to make this clear.
Wait, Steve, Steve, can I interrupt you just for a second? I apologize.
Sure.
There are 72 what? You said there are 72 of these devices, right?
Demons.
No, yeah, there are 72 HAARP, 72 ionospheric heaters, okay?
Okay.
And
now,
basically microwave and ultrawave transmitters.
Okay, all right. Okay, I just want to be clear as to what they were.
Alter the electromagnetic and the other properties of the atmosphere, and they're coordinating, Doug, if you will. Imagine a lattice or a matrix of these things, and just make it real simple. Imagine these are a bunch of combination locks that have been locked up, but someone's trying to turn all the dials at the same time and open all the vault doors at the same time. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you for clearing it up.
I'm trying to give you a picture. So what I said is there are 72 demons, or, in this case, very strong supernatural entities, whether they're principalities or powers or whatever, simply, and I believe that the word demon may be misapplied in that, but that's what they're known as, the goetic demons. And again, a demon is a disembodied spirit, but a principality and power and archons are much higher than that. Now, again, I don't want to get too far into that because I want to talk about terra firma and I want to talk about Bigfoot. The big feet and Bigfoot sightings are increasing so dramatically that 2 weeks ago, I must have got a half a dozen of them. I have a brother Marcus who's, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, pray for brother Marcus. He's a guy that literally is a missionary to one of the reservations out in the Mountain West, and he is dealing with people that are freaked out, Native Americans that are freaked out because they're seeing this stuff happening. And Marcus sent me an email a number of months ago saying, please, Steve, pray for us. And I did ask for prayer back then and stuff. But the point being is that it's not just Marcus in South Dakota or North Dakota, and it's not just the Navajo in Colorado, Utah, and Arizona, and the Four Corners region. I mean, it's all over the place, Doug. So something is being systematically loosed. And that's what I'm telling people. We have to acknowledge and recognize that there is power in the name of Jesus. There's power in the blood of Jesus. And for people that think that they can take this stuff on in their own power and strength, good luck, because you cannot do it. It's one thing to be tough and have weapons and fight what you can see. It's a whole other world not to have the weapons that work against that which you cannot see. But the Christians are not in that realm if they will finally recognize who Jesus truly is and the authority they truly have as believers.
All right, that makes perfect sense, and I'll tell you what, that's a great foundation, by the way, for all of this. Now, can I ask an academic question? This comes from this comes from a listener in Norway, so I want to get this out of the way, and I kind of have. In a way, have a question about this. When we're talking about this, and we're talking about the Bible, of what significance, for example, of giants, Bible, you have many Bible-based quotations in your book, Genesis 6 giants, okay, which I've got here on my desk. But Joe, help me out here because with that question and.
Yeah, because yesterday when we went to come back from the second hour, we were talking to ourselves, not knowing we were off air, but I started referencing some of the Bible verses where you quoted that the giants are referenced and Nephilim are referenced, and if we could just have a more biblical understanding, lay out that foundation and why it applies to us today, and that's probably where you're going.
And that's Andre's question out of Norway. How does what you're talking about apply to us today?
Because it's all related. I guess I'm missing something, or he's missing something. Let me make it plain and simple. Most people do not understand what the days of Noah were like. It was such a time of entities that were not only human. That's what Jesus said you're going to deal with. And so if people don't understand, see, no offense, Doug, but that question tells me that I'm not making it clear enough for you or Joe or most of the listeners. The point is that we are going to deal with these things, okay? When Jesus said men's hearts are going to fail them for fear for looking after those things coming upon the earth, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Okay,
I'm telling you, they're going to die of a heart attack. Have you ever heard scared to death?
Yeah, exactly.
What I'm trying to say is this. Now listen, the fallen angels and the demons and the giants are coming back, but the demons that have been bound, okay, and the same thing with specific groups of angels, when the fallen angels, evil angels, they're going to wreak havoc on the planet. And I would dare say that the man in Norway has very little understanding. I'm not picking on him, but I'm just saying he needs to get caught up to speed, because that is really, and he may not even have ever embraced racist stuff. But most people think that, that the Bible deals with 5 points, and they fail to see the 1 billion that come after that. And so what I'm trying to say to all that are listening, because that question kind of, it surprises me, Doug, it truly does.
Well,
What Jesus said is we're going to be dealing with things that we've never dealt with before. Mankind has never dealt with. And if the days were not shortened, there'd be no flesh left alive, okay?
Right. And
so
I apologize for that. I apologize.
No, you don't have to apologize. And please, I'm not trying to be defensive. I'm trying to be informative. So what we're talking about, and see, can I say this? If you guys aren't getting it, then I'm not being clear enough, okay? So I'm trying to be extra clear in how I am saying this. Everything we're talking about, whether it's Bigfoot, whether it's Nephilim, whether it's Rephaim, whether it's aliens, that's what people are going to be dealing with. They're going to be dealing with that which has been invisible becoming visible. They're going to have to deal with that which they thought were only legends breaking into the realm of reality. They're talking about extra dimensionals that have been bound out of God's love and mercy. And if somebody wants to ask that question, and maybe I'm not being clear on this, before the man in Norway or you, Doug, or Joe ask that question, you guys both need to go and read the book of Giants. It's just the specific things, and the book of Enoch to get the basic plan that the fallen angels that were bound are now being loosed, and there are some that were not bound, only the ones that created sex sin or initiated sex sin. And the hardest point to get across, and this is what you're struggling with, both of you guys and the guy in Norway, is we're dealing with those times. So when people say just as in the days of Noah, they think, well, that's just a metaphor. No, it's not. It's the most articulate, most multidimensional, and infinite in its ramification statement, I believe, that Jesus made concerning the end times.
Okay, and let me just two things here. It's Andre, and it's a female. I apologize, Andre.
Oh,
Andrea.
Okay.
And that was my fault. And the second part of that, she asked, "Are we going to be fighting these entities, or are we just going to be? I mean, in other words, as they show themselves, are we going to be made to go against them or fight these entities?" I mean, that was the second part of that question. Her question.
How about this? Yes and yes.
Okay, all right, and that's. Yeah, I just want to make sure that question was answered. All right. Well, so as in the days of Noah, so we are going to experience things we've never seen before, and our hearts are going to fail us. Our hearts are going to fail us for what we've seen.
Unless our hearts are prepared. Look, here's the deal. Everybody in the country right now, in the United States, is caught up, but the whole world's caught up in the financial realm. Okay. Everybody basically has to make a living. They go to work. They got to pay mortgages. They have them. They basically have to put their kids through college, but it's pretty much why anymore. The point is that everybody's got the rhythm of life that they consider, that I would determine, let's just call it the normal rhythm of life. The normal rhythm of life doesn't deal with fallen angels, demons, doesn't deal with Bigfoot, doesn't deal with the arcane history of antiquity, but all the people that came before us up until a certain point had to deal with that stuff, including more so than anybody, the Native Americans that were both in America and South America. And even people would be surprised to know that if you're talking about the history of the United States of America, you're dealing with giants. And let's just say the continent of North America and the continent of South America, you're dealing with myths and legends, and you're dealing with red-haired giants in Lovelock, Nevada, that are also recorded as coming from China and inhabiting China. So this isn't just to, quote, get on and give people entertainment. What this is boot camp for the supernatural, okay? That's a good way of putting it. This is, and I can understand this, Doug, and please, let me make a statement. I understand this from the words of Jesus. That's who teaches me. That's who obviously empowers me. That's who called me, and that's he who equips me. But again, I find it so telling and compelling that Jesus said to the most religious people, even scholars that knew the Old Testament, the Law and the Prophets, they could quote it backwards and forwards. They could quote the feast. But basically, he said, if I tell you earthly things and you believe me not, how can I tell you heavenly things? And then Jesus scolds them and says, look, you can look up in the sky, I'm paraphrasing, and see that you see the clouds, you say it's going to rain today, but you don't see what's before you. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not what is before us now, the normal rhythm of life we've got to deal with. It's what's coming our way, and unless you understand that, most 1.2 billion Catholics, the war that's going to be in the Catholic Church between the traditional Catholics, and this is not Catholic bashing, and though Catholics that are into the new doctrine and dogma, it's going to be horrific. It's going to basically, and not only in the Catholic Church, this is coming into Protestantism, this is coming throughout the world. And what I'm saying is everyone's belief system is going to be upset. It's going to be perilous. People are going to see things and they're going to want answers. Do you think the average guy that's up in the pulpit, and look, I am not a basher of the men of God who preach the Word of God. I'm talking about hirelings and whorelings, okay? That's a new word, by the way, whorelings, okay? WHORELING. I want you to know I invented that word just for tonight, okay? The bottom, if you will, the point that I'm trying to make is that when truth is first presented, the natural man has to basically put it aside, put it away, belittle it, or in America, shoot the messenger, okay? They'd rather shoot the messenger than hear the message. And so after enough evidence and time has come that they can emotionally settle down, and emotion's a good word because that's something that takes place in the soul of man, not in the spirit of man. The things of God are revealed through the Spirit of God to the spirit of man. The soulish things, mind, will, intellect, and emotions, that's soul. The Greek word for that is psyche, P-S-Y-C-H-E. We get the word psychology, we get the word psychiatric, psychotic, psychoanalysis. All the words that begin with psycho are basically dealing with the human interaction with their world around them through their five senses. The Spirit of God, when a man becomes born again or a woman becomes born again, we basically get a new spiritual sense where we can begin to discern the Spirit of God versus our emotions. And our emotions will war against the Spirit within us that God's trying to birth because it isn't rational. Basically, Jesus said, if you don't believe me for this, believe me for that. And you know, even the Pharisees that were trying to, you know, basically bring accusations against Jesus couldn't deny the fact that, look, they can say what they want, but no man's ever done the things that this man has done, meaning Jesus. Or John writes in the book of John that if all the books that were ever written in the world, they couldn't contain everything that Jesus did. All we get is the highlights in the Gospels, you know, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We get four different perspectives of four different men and seeing different attributes of Jesus, but we don't realize all the things that Jesus did. Listen, if you're the Son of God, as Jesus is, and you come to redeem mankind, then you're going to make it clear to every single person. Doug, there are people that would get upset, religious people, if a prostitute came into their congregation. Now, look, Jesus basically didn't come to save those who have no need for salvation. There are people that just simply don't want it. But to those who are sick, those are who he comes to as a great physician. And the sickness throughout the world is sin, S-I-N. Sin means to miss the mark. It means that God intended for us such a marvelous, marvelous state of existence and such a glorious future. And Satan, in his rage and contempt for mankind, sought to destroy the very seed of God. And that's why the book of Genesis basically says there's enmity between God's seed and the serpent's seed, okay? So we're in a time period now that it's not been like this, whether we're starting the tribulation, beginning the tribulation, or are, ready to go into the tribulation. The issue is we're confronted with prophecies from whether it's St. Malachi, whether it's Nostradamus, but all of them, by the way, go back to the book of Revelation. But everybody that quotes the book of Revelation, and I've been saying this for 20 years on talk radio, everybody that quotes the book of Revelation don't recognize it's not the revelation of bad stuff that's going to come. It's a revelation that God gave to his servant John, the revelation of Jesus Christ. And all the scrolls that are open, the only one worthy in all of creation to open those by God's assignment is his son, Jesus. And so it's funny when I get into arguments with people that are of the Muslim persuasion, they say God has no children. And I say, was Solomon a wise man? They acknowledge Solomon. Was Jesus the prophet? I said, they'll acknowledge that. But Solomon in his wisdom, and in talking in Proverbs, says, tell me if you have wisdom, Lemuel, what is God's name or what is his son's name? Excuse me, that's one of the oldest books in the Old Testament. So right there, you've got a situation, whether you want to quote the book of Genesis, let us make man in our image, it's certainly not God calling on Lucifer for his approval. So we're in a realm now where the total contempt for human life, and here's where I'll bring it kind of to, I think, a conclusion on this one point. The contempt for human life has never been echoed to the degree it's being echoed. The plans, the chemtrail spraying, the geoengineering, the genetic manipulation of our food, of our the manipulation of our water, the vaccinations they want to give us. And I still like the little rhyme that I came up with years ago. Shot in the arm, shot in the head, either way you end up dead. Listen, the amount of evidence of vaccination and its byproducts, it's not byproducts, but the physical ailments that are attributed to vaccination are beyond anybody's challenge. Yet people will not do their own homework. And now laws are being written, and we're hearing about swarming drones that literally can overwhelm you, and they can sting you, or they can blow you up, or they can do this, do that, or do the other thing. When in the world, and at no time in the world, has technology become so what would you say, profuse in its use? And it's interesting, isn't it? Guess who's being targeted, everyone who's listening to this program tonight? You are. If you're not one of them, you're a target. And just like Doug, 2 years ago, I said to the vets, I said, you guys are being targeted, you're going to be vilified, they're going to build a case against you, and then you're going to be destroyed. I just posted a story on my website about supposedly, I cannot prove it yet, but go and read it for yourself, vets. I said, I thought there might have been hope if in a peaceful assembly, and I stress peaceful, nonviolent, I said, if all the vets would rally and have marches across the country saying, we fought for this country, we are not this country's enemies. If you go to my website, stevequayle.com, the top story is about now the vets are going to be given letters they can't own guns. They can go and bleed and die and kill on command, but when they come back, if they own a gun, they will be killed on the same people that put them in the foreign fields. They'll be killed on command. Doesn't that sound a little bit duplicitous? So when somebody says, how is this stuff important, I can only say this. It's the most important time in history, because this is what Jesus talked about when he said, lo, I am with you even to the end of the age. I deal with, how should I say this? I got to be really kind here. I deal with people on a daily basis that transcend all spectrums of life and all walks of life and all areas of the world. And I can't answer them all. My standard statement to anybody that would send me an email on aliens, giants, or any of this stuff, I won't answer your questions until you've at least read my book. Not because I want to sell books. It's because I have spent 40 years of my life laying it out in a book form. And I'm telling you, Doug, that and Joe, and I don't know that you guys have read my books, and this isn't putting you on the spot or embarrassing you, but that I didn't write that stuff just to fill paper to put in an envelope to mail out. It's the thing that it's 40 years of my investigation to prepare people for this day. And if people cannot apply themselves to knowledge, then unfortunately they're going to be overwhelmed when their sensory organs, what they see, what they hear, what they smell, what they embrace, what they come into contact with, it's going to simply overwhelm, it's going to bulldoze them. And that's why Jesus was talking, and so many times Paul was talking about the love of the great body waxing cold, because the deception of seducing spirits. Listen, you can't seduce anything or anyone unless you give them something they want or they desire. You can't do it. A woman can make, well, I better go. I'm not going to go there, okay? I'll stop there. The bottom line is, in order to seduce, you have to be ready to give something that somebody wants. The Illuminati is seduced on one word, and it's not money, it's power. What does God give his people? He says the scripture says, to as many as received Jesus, gave he, God, the power to become the sons of God. You cannot live as a Christian without the power of God. If you are living as a Christian without the power of God, then you're living beneath your inheritance, and you're not recognizing who the scripture says you are, but more importantly, you're not recognizing who your Savior is and who his Father is. And the Bible, is distinct in separating the God against all the wannabe fallen angels. And that's the only way I know how to answer everything that we've talked about up to this point.
Gotcha. No, it's really though, Steve. I mean, whether it's Andrea in Norway or Joe, average citizen on the street, those without the knowledge that you've imparted here in Genesis 6 Giants, it's really kind of like a huge and bitter pill to swallow that we are going to be actually seeing this, and I think too a lot of blame too goes to the allegorical. People taking the Bible as an allegory as opposed to literally, I think that has a lot to do with it. But so no, it's you've laid out a great foundation here. Okay, another thing too. I just got a message here from someone else. I'm not sure where this individual is from, but is it not true that what you're talking about, the people in power want to buy or want to harness the future? That's what they're after. You said they're after power, but is it not the future? Their future.
It's like, and boy, tonight's not a good time for quantum physics. But let me give you a good example of a headline that was on Drudge today. What do you see is the number one concern for Zuckerberg, of Facebook fame, and the Google guy. You know what I'm saying? What was it? Did you see that story, Doug?
No, I did not.
And I can't think of his name.
Guess
what?
Advancing human life. Yeah, they granted $3 million to 11 scientists to research and advance human life. Yeah.
Okay, now let me share this with you. Here is the promise the devil has given. Please, Christians, pray right now that you'll hear this truth. Because what you're being told, or what you're seeing in the headlines, thank you, Jesus, what you're seeing is the oldest lie in the world. Ye shall not surely die. If you don't die as a Luciferian or being told you'll never see death, therefore you'll never face judgment, therefore you can live apart from the living God, not bound by his laws or his creative demands, then that's going to sound pretty good to you, especially if you're a billionaire. You mean, do you know how many, I can't say it that way. I'm really trying to watch how I talk. Do you know how much, let's just put it this way. Do you know how much fun you can have if you get to keep your money and live like you want to live, and you can live totally like, as my brother David Langford would say in North Carolina, you can live like hail, okay, and not have to face the consequences. Because that's the same thing, is it not, Joe? What did the devil say when Eve said, but the Lord said, if we eat it, we're going to die. But what did the devil say, Joe?
That you shall surely not die. You shall know the difference between good and evil.
Good job. And that's exactly what they're being promised right now. You follow me?
Okay. That absolutely.
They're being promised. They're being promised. Listen, in my book, Aliens and Fallen Angels, and if I get the books wrong, it's not intentional, or maybe in Genetic Armageddon, or maybe in both. And after, I think I'm up to, 14,000 footnotes, so ladies and gentlemen, I don't mean to mislead, but I will tell you this. It's in Aliens and Fallen Angels. The Methuselah gene, Methula, Methuselah, Aaleh or whatever. Just type it in, and you will. What Methuselah he's the oldest man in the Bible. How long did he live? He lived almost 1,000 years. Okay, 969 years or something. And so when you're dealing with people who had longevity, these are not metaphoric or allegorical licenses. These gentlemen lived that long. And the thing that's interesting is that gene and that process that kept Methuselah or Enoch 365 years or whoever, I mean, you can go into the Bible or just type in Bible patriarchs longevity and you get a list of them. What is happening is they had specific enzymes, and they had a different, if you will, not only digestive tract, but endocrine system and everything else. And God gave them what Adam had originally was eternal life in the garden until he chose to disobey and sin. And with Eve, they both sinned, okay? But the point is that this is what's going on in the headlines. So you can say, I think that quail's whacked out, blah, blah, blah. And I would say to all of you, then why is it that Sergey Brin, and Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook guy or Zuckerberg, the bottom line is they're going to go give that amount of money to scientists for long life, okay? And that's what the devil's promising these people. What's the promise of vampirism, you guys?
It's
what are vampires noted for?
Well, never dying. I mean,
they never die. But what has to happen in order for them never to die?
They're going to be bitten by another vampire.
Right, and they have to continually feast on the life force that's in the blood, correct?
Correct. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So isn't it fascinating? And see, this is what I tell people. You would not want to be me, and you would not want to know what I know. And I don't brag about it. It's just with much knowledge comes much sorrow. And I can only tell you this: it's nothing about self-pity. It's about how do you help people that are going to come into the most horrific. Those of you that are being led and the Lord is speaking to you about this stuff, copy everything that is on my Genesis 6 website. Copy it, print it out, because there's going to come a time where basically the website will be gone. And for those of you that want it all put together, the easiest way, and I can tell you this, I'd rather read a book on this stuff personally than I don't know what my college degree costs. You know what, $40,000-$50,000. I got 2 degrees, and sometimes trying to deal with God's people, it seems like all I get is a 3rd degree. But the point is that that's another attempt at humor. The point is, Doug, is that the price of a book like Aliens and Fallen Angels or Angel Wars or Genesis 6 Giants. I mean, I don't know how to explain to people, but all the questions that I have ever been asked are addressed in those 3 books in one form or another. And believe me, I get a lot of questions. And I want to make this comment. I know nothing about human relationships. I am not the guy to give anybody marital advice, okay? I got a dear brother, and the guy defends me and everything, and I don't know how to give anybody advice about how to get along with the opposite sex. So please don't send me those emails, okay? I'm not kidding, Doug, in what I'm saying. It's frustrating. I don't have the mind of the Lord. I know what the Scriptures say, but I also know that Paul said, this is what the Scripture says, and I speak this by license. There's a lot of people who are struggling in their marriage. Heck, everybody who is married struggles at some point or another. And there are so many people that are coming out of broken homes, broken backgrounds, and if you've got a tumultuous and distorted home life and you grew up in the worst of conditions, then I suggest you go to Life Skills International, Paul Hagstrom, and he's the one to talk about relationships and stuff. So please, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not the Dear Abby of marital advice. I cannot step into that realm, okay? It's not my calling. I have to stay with my calling. Just like tonight, Doug, before I went on the show, I've got people wanting me to address this and address that. No, I can't do what the people want. I have to do what the Lord tells me to, because I know what happened to King Saul when he listened to the people versus the voice of the Lord. You know the story, don't you? It cost him his kingdom. And so I could care less, and I don't mean this to be mean-spirited, and will all the whiners and the weenies just suck it up and keep your thoughts to yourself and say this: if this man is trying to give me something to save my life, if this man is trying to present me with a battle that's yet on my horizon and tell me how to overcome it, maybe I should listen, and I'll trust God. The ultimate relationship fixer-upper is Jesus. And I cannot do what only He can do. So I just had to get that out, Doug, because it's really frustrating to me when people say, could you tell me what to do with my wife? No, I can't. I have enough issues. I'm just walking out my salvation, my own marriage every day, and I think, again, everybody needs to, go to the Lord with those kind of problems, okay? Do we need to take a break?
Yeah. In fact, we do, Steve. Folks are listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Our very special guest tonight is Mr. Steve Quayle. This is kind of a redo of yesterday. Stay with us. We're going to be back in about 3.5 minutes. We promise.
Hi, folks. Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Aileta Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have a long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies that work right there in your neighborhood. KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want and I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Welcome back, folks. Welcome back, folks, to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. Today is Thursday. It's the 21st day of February 2013. This is a live broadcast. Our very special guest, Mr. Steve Quayle, stevequayle.com, and also Genesis, the number 6giants.com. That's Genesis6giants.com. And we're talking about things. Right during the break, Joe said something, and I thought it was pretty profound. He said, isn't it amazing that people fear what they don't understand. And I think that's a really great statement. I think that's why Steve, that is why Steve is here to talk about this. And in my hands, I've got Steve's book, Angel Wars. And I can tell you that it's a phenomenal book. But one of the opening paragraphs in the introduction says this. Steve writes, I can promise you that you're about to fall into an Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole while choosing the blue pill of the Matrix. And as you continue to read, like the character Jim Carrey played in The Truman Show, you'll discover you've been living in a dream world of false facades where things appear to be one thing, but in reality are something quite different, with secret hands directing all that goes on around you. And, from the conversations I've had with people in the intelligence world, and I know Steve has his contacts, which are extremely high up there, this is a matter of our security. It's a matter of national security. It's a matter of eternal salvation. I mean, all things are rolled up into one. So what Steve's talking about tonight, with in particular the Giants aspect, how it plays all in, even that question from Norway, that very academic question, how does this all play in? Well, not only will my people perish for lack of knowledge, there's also that fright condition. And as I circle back around, people are afraid of what they don't know and understand. And with that, welcome back, Steve.
I want to read an email that says why I do what I do. And somebody said, why not call it quits? And even the people that listen to me that knock us off the air, and again, I can only tell you, some people think I make this stuff up when huge amounts of money are brought. But here's the reason I do it. The Bible says, he who winneth souls is wise. And this is a guy that, and I love his pen name, I am Scott Free. He said, I want to thank you. He calls me Mr. Quayle. Well, thank you, but I prefer you guys call me Steve. Your work is not only fascinating, but brought me back to the truth of the Lord Jesus. After my brother passed, I backslid and fell for the ancient alien lie. He said, I heard you in Standale, and I had an awakening. Thank you, and bless you. So the point that I'm trying to make in all this is, listen, I know for a fact there's a hunger in God's people's heart for truth. If there's no hunger, then you better question your relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. If you know all the answers, then write a book and I'll buy your book. I don't know all the answers. All I know is the area that the Lord has called me to address. Obviously, I have shared my testimony enough times, and when people say, who do you think you are? I said, well, actually, I'm like the guy on the street corner that basically has no righteousness of his own. I know what kind of a total, how should I say this, disgusting human being I was before I met Jesus, and so all I can do is beat my breast, and instead of saying, God be merciful to me, a sinner, I just say, Jesus, thank you for being merciful to me, a sinner. I mean, there's a big difference. One is a joyful thing, and the thing that I can say is this, is that if there's any of those of you out there that are still puzzled, or you're traumatized by abductions, you're traumatized by demons. And I hear from more Christians having encounters with evil spirits. I'm hearing from Christians who have been raped by an incubus, that's a male demon, or men who have been raped by a succubus, that's a female demon. And the point that I want people to understand is this, is that God's Word has answers. For instance, the whole 91st Psalm, the terror that comes by night, that's talking about Lilith, the night hag, okay? Well, if you don't understand who Lilith, the night hag is, and when you understand the word man-eater, and man-eater literally means a woman in this context, I'm going to be really as, how do I say this, as careful as I know how to be. I can be blunt, by the way. I can be so blunt. I'm not trying to be blunt and offensive, but let me just say this. Imagine a woman who lures a man sexually and then starts to devour him from his private parts up. That's where the word man-eater came from in history. It has nothing to do with a song written by Michael Cimbello for Flashdance, although, maybe that was a good song. I don't know. But the point is, I wonder how I knew that. Well, the point is that we're dealing with such amazing historical facts. So when you're talking about the terror that comes by night, what did that mean in the 91st Psalm?
Well, the point is that it has a lot to say because, look, when you're dealing with the context of our ancient forefathers who fought the good fight of faith, whether it's King David taking down Goliath, and, there are wimpy people who, I don't know ancient Chaldean. But I can tell you this, when I know 100 ancient accounts of how big Goliath was, for someone to claim that David's 5'2" and Goliath is 6'2", that man is basically an intellectual whore, and I won't name him, but I just will tell you, that's a lie. Then you've got guys who do great work, but attribute everything to the Anunnaki. Zechariah Sitchin did some great work. Well, Sitchin couldn't make the connection between the Anunnaki, meaning those who from heaven to earth came, and basically the fallen angels. And the Anunnaki, Anu is one of the gods of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gods meaning little g, fallen angels. So this stuff is important, Doug, because what people don't realize is that they use words every day. They use words that came into being out of an entire different world of real usage. You can redefine words all you want, but if you want to know what the intent of the writers who used them was, you have to go back into the context of their vocabulary. First of all, one of the great words I know, if I say to both you, what does the word berserk mean? Okay, I love this. Berserk. What does it mean?
Crazy. How's that?
Crazy, okay. Would you believe that word came from a German or a Germanic tribe of giants that destroyed 30,000 Romans in an afternoon, and they were giants? I mean, these guys were not, just imagine 9 to 12-foot entities and basically using Roman soldiers for shish kebab on the end of their spears, and the name of them were the Berserkers, Berserkers, okay? Or let's take Jack the Giant Killer. And if you've never read the British Isles giant stories, it's fascinating because the statement, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. It took a high-ranking military officer to tell me the reason that they smell, it's how the giants, and this was interesting to me, he said they track by the harmonics of the scent of your DNA, okay? And that's interesting to me. Just like a bloodhound would track that's how the giants hunted their prey. That's why the Native Americans, basically had to use so much smoke, and that's how they would basically take on the giants. And they do it with the copper spears, solid copper. And somebody wanted me to address this tonight, and that was told to me. I couldn't know this stuff, Doug, unless the people that really fight these things told me. And then they said, well, how do you know they're not giving you a line of bull? Because I can go into history and read how the Indians and Native Americans fought them, and it all lines up. So the point is why did David cut off Goliath's head? He cut off his head because the giants have an amazing ability to spontaneously regenerate unless the head is severed. I had a 4-star general tell me that, and thank you, 357 SIG, for that. The point is that, yeah.
No, okay, now just to add or buttress what you're saying there. Okay, I had a recent conversation with somebody one of my contacts. Okay, and he said a couple of things. I want to kind of get your take on this because to me this just absolutely blew my mind. And folks, listen to Steve's response. Okay, the first thing he told me: consciousness resides outside of the body. Okay, now, if that is true, and let's assume for the purpose, just for a second here, before you respond, let's assume that's true. He said, think of it this way. Everyone's DNA is slightly different in harmonic frequency. Mine's a little different than yours. We're kind of like antennas. DNAs are like antennae, perhaps, where the harmonics are just a touch different than each other's. Now, the people that we're talking about, the Luciferians, the Illuminati, the Illuminists, the people in power, and this is where it applies to today, since we're talking about this, believe. Just as like your consciousness as well as your memories resides outside the body, and if you can imagine this big hard drive, with somewhere, virtual hard drive, or a cloud, internet cloud of consciousness. The people today believe that they that they can actually, even if they die, perhaps they can through DNA manipulation live again and reaccess, we'll say, the consciousness of pharaohs, or even their own conscious that's resonant outside the body. Does that make sense, or did I screw that up? And
yeah,
what are your...
and you know, obviously, I hope your source. But let's just make it clear: I don't know his name. I don't know anything. I just know of him, and that's for his sake and my sake. So, you know, and for the record, I was contacted by some law enforcement guys on a federal level, and they said they can't tell me their names, and had some questions, and I sent them back an email. I said, brother, I don't, and the guy's a Christian, I said, I don't ask anybody's names. You see, when I hear, well, tell us your name, or you're just making this stuff up, I basically say, go back to the hole you crawled out of, you child of hell, you spawn of heaven's rebellion, because those are the kind of questions where, you know, I can't give up any names if I don't know the name. So it is my operating style not to request or need to know names. How I do it, I try and get 2 or 3 verifications. Sure, I get snookered sometimes. Most of the times it's people taking old news stories and sending them to me. Look, I'm a one-man show, meaning that I've got a, you know, I have my Daryl, my guy that puts up some of the stuff on my website, but I'm responsible for it. But when you know what it's like, Doug, I'm not making excuses, but when I'm writing the biggest book of my life, okay, and thank God, Mac, bless you, thank you. Thank God, Dennis and Shanna. Thank God for all of you that are helping me in this realm. It's a composite effort, but I'm still, if you will, the captain of the ship. And I can only say this: if people understood the amount of data that I have to sort through, they just simply couldn't handle it. They can't. And because I'm wired different than most people, and I've actually had brain scans and gone into SPECT scans, and if you know what those are, and I've been told, boy, you don't function like most people, you know, and that's why I used to get bawled out by certain people for not being able to follow instructions. I said, yeah, if I build a swing set, it looks like something Edward Scissorhands would build, you know, and I mean, yeah, I just can't do it, okay. And to me, you know, an instruction book is nothing more than an effective target for a .22. So the thing that I'm trying to say here is this, is that the amount of data that is processed, I have to try and get 2 or 3 separate validations. What your source is telling you is exactly true. Because the Illuminati, look, I was told point blank that the Illuminati has my, DNA. And then I got pissed. And I'm sorry for using that word, but look, we're talking about the end of the age. We're talking about monsters, ghouls, goblins, demons, and that's a biblical term, just like bastard is. And if that is offensive to you, then you better check your self-righteous religious cloak at the door. And I got to tell you something. Again, the problem with most men today is that they have quizzicals and have not passed the testicle part of their life. And meaning that, you know, the scripture when it said the men in the midst of thee are women, I can't tell you. All you got to do, and I don't listen to Dr. Laura, but if you listen to Dr. Laura when you're traveling and get her on the talk channel, by the way, I think she's a brilliant woman. I mean, when I hear the men there, my goodness, I'm aghast, and I'll turn to my wife if she's in the car and I say, is that what's represented by men calling in Dr. Laura? Most of them, and I'm going to say this, you know, it's like they're sniveling weenies, okay? Well, I love some of the men of God that I know because they are the men of God. And when men of God preach and teach the young men how to be men of God, something happens. But you can't put a wuss in the pulpit and expect anything but wussies to come out of the congregation, you know? I mean, let me share this. If I want to go find spineless jellyfish, I'm going to go diving, okay? I can always scuba diving. I can always run into jellyfish. I just don't expect them to be the human equivalent of blobs. And not only blobs, but gobs of blobs. In other words, this is my experience. It's not out of bitterness. It's out of practicality. You cannot produces light. You cannot teach a person the revelation of God unless God has given that revelation.
And so it's amazing to me when I hear people now, the great attack is on Paul the Apostle. You know, he's not really, I mean, there's so much error. Paul said God is going to judge the world through his gospel. So when I hear people, and I parted company with people, if someone says they don't believe Paul, you know, I just part company with them. I will not talk to them. I will have nothing to do with them again, because they basically have just thrown out the book of Romans, the book of Corinthians. They've thrown out all the epistles, and they're saying that their life is better than the man who persecuted the Christians, who's literally knocked off of his ass on the road to Damascus, is blinded by the glory of the Lord, told to go to Ananias into Joppa and have him pray for his eyesight. This is amazing. I have a pastor friend, Dane, ex-Special Forces guy. I love this guy. Instantly, I have fellowship with him. Or my friend Pastor Bruce, or my friend John Kyle, or David Langford. David is probably one of the most amazing men of God I know. I'm not praising him or embellishing him or flattering him. David and I are very frank with each other, but David is an absolute living example of God's redemptive power in a renegade. I can tell you point blank. Or my friend Cornelius II. Man, he thrills my heart when he says, Steve, I burned out a pair of tires in under three months, you know, and I know how fast he drives, and I say, right on, brother. You know, and somebody say, well, you should not drive fast because you're endangering lives. He doesn't endanger anybody's life. He just opens it up when he's got, you see, we become a bunch of weenies. We have lost the pioneer spirit. We have lost the perseverance spirit. Not all of them. And so, sure, you can go out and get a bunch of trained killers that are just licking their chops to come get their shot at you, Doug, or their shot at me or Hawk or whoever, you know, Greg Evenson, God knows. But I want you guys to know, be very careful, because Greg's surrounded by angels, and he knows how to give it back to you. So the point is that that's not a threat. You see, when it's shooting fish in the barrel, it's one thing. But when the fish go with bulletproof vests and they have Gatling guns in the water, and somebody goes to shoot them with a 22 and a barrage of, 20 millimeter, chain gun come at them, then that's a whole different story. What I'm saying is, in the spiritual metaphor, the power of God is not bound by our limitations. Yet we are the one bound by our limitations because we do not know, acknowledge, or appropriate the power of God. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of ground there, from the wimpization, from the metrosexuality of men, the self-castration to actually. Yeah, I mean, you
also their inability to discern simple matters that they should know, and this comes, as you know, and as new PDFs have been released on the manipulation of society, culture, norms, and values, and their continuation to manipulate these norms and our culture. So people are falling into this way the culture is moving instead of the way and standing strong that they should be in the Word.
Well, again, faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. I try and put up quotes of the day, which really should be quotes of the week. If I leave them up, it's not that I'm too lazy to change them, but the quotes I put up, I think Monday, are still up on faith. The just shall live by faith. Well, the point is that faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. When the Bible says the just shall live by faith, it doesn't say the just shall live by government endowment, okay? And ultimately, Joe and Doug and everyone listening, though the Roman Christians were persecuted because they were told that Caesar's God, you are going to be persecuted because you're not going to acknowledge they who claim to be God, where they come in spaceships or, giant fruitcakes with wings. Oh, by the way, giant fruitcakes with wings, that just pretty much tells you how Congress and the Senate function, okay? The point is
you were going to say that.
Listen, yeah, you got that one, right?
Yeah, I knew exactly where you were going. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh.
So the point is that we are now at a time, unlike any in history, and I want to reiterate this again. There is no way I can cover 6,000 years
of Earth's history and then the dateless past. What I've done is spent 40 years of my life in investigation. And please, ladies and gentlemen, one thing I want to make clear too, Doug, my books are not on Amazon. If you see a report on Amazon that somebody's read my book, I don't think they can put a report on except to be fake. I had a guy call me because he got offended because I didn't agree with him. He wrote a bad report about my book and put it up on Amazon. Well, I can challenge it, but why? So, and this guy claimed to be, I'm with you, bro. The minute I hear I'm with you, bro, man, I'm telling you what, my sword is at the ready. And I'm serious. I'm talking about, and I don't mean a physical sword. I'm talking about, I'm on guard. Because when you fence, when you're going to notify your partner, what's the first thing you say? If you're Peter Sellers, you say en garde. But, we would say on guard. In other words, get ready. It's how in martial arts, when you step into the ring in full contact karate, you might have to bow to your opponent, but your eyes are on him at all times. And, you're going, his next move is going to be this, and my move is going to be this. So I guess what I'm trying to say is what I'm trying to teach people is to square off in the arena of faith, because what's coming is beyond my ability to articulate it in such a way that I cannot even... I could be as gross, and when I say gross, I don't mean swearing or profane, but I just mean I could get as bloody and gory as the pictures that have filled my mind in visions and revelations from the Lord. And I can't do it, Doug. I just can't do it. And I've asked the Lord to give me license not to. I said, Lord, that's one realm you're going to have to speak to your people on. So when I put up the dreams and visions on my website, stevequayle.com, and I encourage everybody to go to the dreams and visions and the alerts section every day, because that's where the hot personal stuff goes as people come in. And I get people arguing with everything. By the way, let me just speak of the precious metals. My financial guy, and there are people listening to the show that don't like what he said, but at least JJ and V agree on one thing. They're both, JJ is one of the world's most famous traders in commodity, exceptionally brilliant man, but the gold market is being manipulated. The silver market is being manipulated. If you go and look at the charts on Kitco and go back a year ago to, I think it's July, you'll see that the low on silver was 26.70 and the low on gold was maybe 15.40. So what they're doing, ladies and gentlemen, they're forcing, they meaning J.P. Morgan and the entities that control them, the Fed, are forcing the spot market price down. And they're doing that in order to allow the people they've made deals with to buy up all the physical silver and gold, which there's a lot of physical silver and gold being sold. Yesterday, the two biggest, wholesalers in the country of precious metals are both $1 billion in sales, billion. I mean, these are not little outfits. There's only 6 of them in the country. Told me they had the busiest day all year because and I said, is it the little guys buying? He said, absolutely not. They're scared, to use another word. But he said, but what we're seeing is people with big money coming in and buying it all up. So is that just a statement of a gold dealer who can't say, gee, the reason gold and silver are going down? V was on your radio program talking about that. You remember that, Doug?
Yeah, I do, Steve, and I want to kind of ask a question that kind of extends off of what he said. Are we seeing, is this kind of a warning sign to a last gasp, if you will, of what's coming?
In other words, I think a better way to say it is this the last manipulation? Well,
yes.
First of all, based on the amount of money going in and the amount of money coming into the gold and silver market, by the way, $1 billion pretty much, maybe 2, buys all the silver that's in existence right now. And I'm not talking in ETFs, exchange-traded funds, or any of that. I'm talking about physical silver and gold. I stay up on that stuff, Doug. Actually, I stay up too late at night on that stuff. But when everyone else is sleeping, I'm watching the markets in either Japan or in London because I have the capability of trading 24/7, okay? And I found that my body just can't, I'm going with 4 hours of sleep and my brother Bruce, who is a wonderful man of God, has said, Steve, God's going to slow you down 20% and make you 80% more effective. I thought, Bruce, I accept that word, because I would love to slow down. Even a guy sent me an email tonight saying, will you slow down, when you're talking. Here's what I'm contending with, everyone. I'm contending with information that is absolutely, how should I say this, not only provocative, but terrifying in its ramifications. Because most of us don't live in a world of blood and gore. People who have lived in the battlefield and who have basically, had to do cleanups on extreme accidents and slaughters and all that stuff do. But most of us simply don't, including me. Yet when I don't, and 40 years ago, I'm given a vision, a literal vision of the end-time events, and that's what's motivated me to write. Had I known the ridicule, had I known the scorn, had I known the hate, the death threats, the contempt, the actual, if you will, the most wicked expression of human depravity, I don't think I probably would have said, yes, Lord. God in His grace gave me the grace to do it, but I really don't think anybody would do it outside of being called to do it. And again, what's fascinating to me is everybody can get on the rapture bandwagon. Try getting on it when everybody's saying rapture, pre-trib rapture, and the Lord tells you there's not going to be a pre-trib rapture. He said, my people have always had to go through the furnace of the fire, but I'm with them. Gives me Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Gives me Daniel in the lion's den. Gives me King Jehoshaphat fighting against insurmountable odds, and the Lord says, don't even take up your weapon. Just start to praise me, and I'll give you the victory. And then He has the army that would have decimated Jehoshaphat, and the children of Israel turn their swords on each other. Or how about Pharaoh drowning in the sea? Again, the Scripture basically declares that the battle is the Lord's, but we have to do our part, and our part is exercising our trust, our faith, and basically coming to the conclusion, and this is hard for all of us, me too, it's really hard, that God is who He says He is and will do what He says He will do based on His promise. That Jesus really meant what He said when He said, behold, I give you power to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. You see, Doug, I could go on talk radio. I mean, I could. I'm not going to. Outside of the 1 day a week or 2 days a week in this case because of last night's interruption, I could go on and I could continue to talk about the monetary system or the Federal Reserve or gun confiscation or the political blah, 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 blah. The Lord said, Steve, I'm changing your direction. You need to minister to my people. I said, Lord, you're going to have to help me love your people because there's a whole lot of them I don't like. Okay? Now, how many people will tell you that? I had a guy throw that up in my face, and I said, brother, the difference between me is you think it in your heart and won't say it. I know I need a change of heart, but I will tell the truth. So, the point that I'm trying to get, Doug, is that the hardest, and for my point of reference, who gave Jesus the worst time? The religious people, okay? Who absolutely wanted the system to kill Jesus? The people who were benefiting financially from, their religious system, okay? In other words, they didn't want God's house to be a house. They wanted to be a television evangelist broadcast begging for money. And that's exactly how I see those guys, okay? Don't tell me that this brother is such a wonderful thing. God doesn't build His kingdom on the widow's mite. Faith demonstrates itself by the widow's mite, but you don't build the kingdom of God by sucking money and the life out of people by promising them, if you just give me $239, I'll give you 239 blessings. And if you want God to like you, you need to sow into my ministry. As a guy drives a Ferrari and a Lamborghini Gallardo and has, multi-million-dollar houses, I would say this, that man is conducting himself in a manner that would make any whore or prostitute in history jealous. Now,
I agree.
So be it, You see, we settle for so much vomit that nobody knows the Scripture anymore. Taste and see that the Lord is good, Taste and see that the Lord is good. And I'm sorry we got off Bigfoot tonight, but it just, the idea is that, I have to go, and I'm sorry, that I veered from that. But here's what I'm doing, everybody. I'm going to start putting up on my Genesis 6 Giant site, long before the book goes out, a lot of the findings and stuff that will blow your mind. I have found that because of the question asked to me earlier, and I'm not mad at Andrea or Andre or whatever, the female, or even Doug, you and Joe, I'm not mad at that, but I'm failing to communicate the major point. Bigfoot is an addendum. The issue is the warfare and the multidimensional attack that's coming against the people of God. And it's going to be in a realm that is both fleshy and bloody. It's going to be a unparalleled period of gore. We're already seeing things I warned about. I remember talking, and I'm going to just tell everybody. I told everybody 20 years ago that you'll know you're in the end times when beheading becomes a daily affair in the headlines, when cannibalism is no longer a rarity or a scarcity, but a commonality, when human life is debased and debauched, when mankind reverts to their most animal instinct. And look, I know what it's like to live like a total dog in heat, okay? That's the only way I know how before I came to Jesus, okay? So I know that part of life. And yet what I found that the blood of Jesus is so efficacious and is so effective. Does that mean I don't struggle? Absolutely. You guys think you come under attack? I want to thank, again, every intercessor who prays for me. I want to thank Romy, who spends hours in prayer coming against the attack, and then she gets physically attacked and falls down and rips her rotator cuff or is tripped, or whatever. God bless you, Romy. I want to thank Manette, who weeps and prays and fasts. I want to thank Diana. I want to thank Tracy. I want to thank everybody in Bruce and Susan's congregation. These are people that are so concerned, and I want to thank Dr. and Emily for what you guys have done for me all these years, because, I was told by a general, quit going on coast to coast, Steve. The guy is not, going to help you. And at one point, obviously I had to leave coast to coast because of, some personal issues I had, and also because of the fact that I cannot go along with ghosts and ghouls and goblins and all that stuff anymore. It cannot be done. And again, Doug, as I've said before, the majority of my response from coast to coast listeners, when some shows I get 1,000 emails the following day, were from Christians who listen to coast to coast. Christians are hungry for the truth. You're either going to get it with the devil's slant, or you're going to get it with the biblical imperative. And then the thing that you've got to do is, look, I can give everybody 40,000 footnotes, but if they won't read and seek God and ask Him to show them stuff, 90% of what I get isn't from footnotes, it's from the prayer of God's intercessors. The reason I'm not taken out, I've had people say this, I wish you would die. That way I know that you were telling the truth, because you couldn't live if you were telling the truth. Well, yes, I can, because, 1,000 will fall at my left side, 10,000 my right, but it's the intercessors. It's not because of moral quality of my life. I make the statement. Look, I'm a guy who's a sinner saved by grace. I have no commendation except I have a passion for He who saved me to quit allowing pagans and the spawn of hell to mock Jesus. And trust me, if my prayers were answered, the face of the earth would be different tomorrow. But because the prophecy must be fulfilled, the Word of God must be fulfilled, the Lord can obviously see my intent and the genuine nature of my intercession. But because His plan is greater than what I can see, and His ways are greater, and I'm not even comparing myself, Lord, I'm just saying, Lord, there are certain things that should be happening just to get these guys' attention, because, Lord, even as an earthly father, if someone was taking on my son and being ruthless and cruel and putting his picture in a vat of urine and defecating and putting all these monstrosities and calling it art, I mean, trust me, Elijah's fire on the altar of the prophets of Baal would seem like kindling, But you see, again, there's a difference between the anger of man that does not work the righteousness of God and holy indignation. I pray for the day that the men of God and the women, by the way, I've said this, thank you, women of God who are intercessors, because the bravest, most powerful intercessors I met to date, minus a couple pastors,
are all women. They're not women who are pastors. They are women who are praying. They're warriors, and I would rather line up with the Deborahs than the dilettantes in the pulpit, okay? And there are mighty women of God. And here's what I want to say. But that does not give those women of God the right to become Jezebel, and that's the danger. And Pastor Bruce and I had a good talk about this week. And at some point, because I don't want to, expose him to any undue flack, Doug, like you and I are used to taking, I just will call him that. But bless you, Brother Bruce. Bless you, Susan. Bless the entire congregation. Bless you, John and Linda. Bless you, David. Bless you, Kim. Thank you, Tracy. These are people, J.D., Jenny. Boy, thank you, Cornelius II. These are people, thank you, James P. in Colorado. These are people that have put their lives on the line, and they have stood in the gap to help others. They're the ones that encourage me because they care in a loving way. And, Doug, you've been blessed by some of those people I just named.
Very, very much so. Very much.
And
yes.
so, let me share this. The Bible is absolutely going to be fulfilled before us. And that's the thing that we have got to come to the grips with, okay? We have got to come to grips with. We have got to recognize, look, I don't know, and this is how I approach everything I do. Someone says, well, why can't you stick to Bigfoot or UFOs? Because there are issues that are bigger than that at the point. I went last night with the idea I'd do 3 hours. The devils that are, the powers that be, the Lucys from Lucyland made sure that they expressed themselves and, shot, quote, fired the shot across the bow. Well, praise God. We're not the good ship of lollipop. We're in the lordship of the Lord Jesus Christ. And it's, ladies and gentlemen, I don't understand the dynamics of it, but I know this, that while there's yet a voice to proclaim Jesus that's still salt in this wicked earth, okay? I know the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, but I also know that God himself made the statement that he will destroy those who destroy the earth. They can basically shoot themselves in whatever part of their body with whatever Methuselah gene or genetic altering drug. They can download their entire subconscious into a new duplicate of them, a clone duplicate. They can party hardy in this life and in the life they think they're going to have, but at the point that God pulls the plug on the power and the juice that's keeping them going, they're going to be like the Portrait of Dorian Gray, a great movie, by the way, black and white movie. But his picture never aged. As long as the picture was youthful, he was youthful. But once the mirror was broken, he aged rapidly and accelerated. Same thing with a vampire. Cut off the blood and they die. But it's the same thing in a Christian's life. If you're not transfused by the blood of Jesus, the life is in the blood, Leviticus. The power of God is in the blood. If that's offensive to you as a Christian, you better go to the altar. You better repent and get right. Because the bottom line is this is the power of God unto salvation. It's the blood of Jesus that cleanses us. The blood, it's the life of Jesus that flows. It's the heavenly transfusion that goes. It's the power of the Holy Spirit who leads, guides, and directs. It's the power of the Spirit of God that infuses with the knowledge of the Most High. And it's not by searching do you get it. You can search the Scripture. Jesus said to the Pharisees, you do well, but they speak of me, and you say, but who are you? So, ladies and gentlemen, I would just say, those of you who are Christians, go to the Lord. Say, Lord, is this stuff true or is it wacky? Lord, show me what I can't see. And then lay aside your bias and repent and say, Lord, if I'm being stubborn, help me to see my stubbornness. And it's amazing how God will answer a contrite heart, but he will completely avoid a proud heart.
Well said. And I think people have to know or should know the backstory. Steve, when you express your displeasure with the mockers and the people that give you trouble, I just want people to imagine themselves, 40 years having, let's say, one of the worst migraines you could have, and on top of that have a broken tooth and a toothache, and then you're walking around and stub your toe, and you're just trying to seek some sort of comfort in your chair in a dark room somewhere until you can, get rid of your headache and your toothache and your painful toe. And then you've got somebody, generally a righteous, self-proclaimed righteous Christian, taking a sharp stick and poking at you all of the time. And imagine having that happen for 30 or 40 years like you have, Steve. Now, I'm not making an excuse, but the mental picture here is, from what I've experienced over the last year with respect to some of the most self-proclaimed righteous Christians saying, well, you should not do this, or you should do that, or you're wrong here, and how dare you speak of this, and holy cow, just my year of that as we've had this program. I cannot imagine sustaining 40 years in your shoes. So people should understand. Yeah, I don't even know if I made a correct mental. Does that sound about right? I mean, it's just like, holy cow.
Well, yeah, and it's not that I'm sitting around licking my wounds, but I will tell you this, that, and I say this, I am absolutely calling on God to control my mouth, because my mouth can bless God or it can curse men, okay? But there comes a time when weenies who hide behind, they've never done anything, they hide behind anonymous names. I had a guy take me to task because, I hurt his feeling. He sends me anonymous email. Any of you send me anonymous emails, I think you're cowards. I think you are absolutely written in the last chapter of Revelation. When those of you send me emails, I will not even answer them. I did answer this one guy, okay? Here's the thing. It's amazing that people who want anonymity, and I hear they're Christians. You cannot be a Christian and not care about the lost. If you don't care about the lost, if you don't care about eternal life, if you don't care about what God thinks of you, you can think whatever. You can call, and I don't mean any disrespect to the Lord, but the God of heaven is not the tooth fairy. The God of heaven is not the Wizard of Oz. The God of heaven is not the man in the sky. When I hear people talk about the Lord, the man in the sky, it is so offensive to me, I almost want to unload with my superlatives, and trust me, I used to be known as someone who would get kicked out of public events for my mouth, okay, before I became a Christian.
That's hard to believe.
By the grace of God, I am throttling back, okay, although some of these people would do good to get throttled. But again, Doug, here's what we're talking about, and let me maybe put this into perspective. Righteous indignation is different from the anger of man in this. Righteous indignation was what David expressed when Goliath was mocking the God of heaven. I want to put everybody into a conscience quiz tonight. When's the last time you stuck up for Jesus when you could have, but you stayed silent because you were worried about what people would say? When's the last time you fell back to how God used to use you, but for 20 years, because you've been a wimp, a weenie, and a coward, you won't step up to the plate? When's the last time you basically had the opportunity to you saw somebody and their focus of their gaze, you knew in your heart that you should go tell them that God loves them, maybe give them a $50 bill. Well, I'm just using those as three simple things. Yet, you know what I hear all the time? I hear, God didn't call me to do that. So what did he call you to do? Sit and have a bowel movement and wait for the second coming? Because I'm not kidding you. I've literally told people, if their bowels are moving, shouldn't they try and keep up with their bowels? Somebody will say, that's offensive. Listen, what's offensive is what they've got planned for the Christians. They've got planned for the Christians Brother Bob's vision. Al Cuppett put it out, and I've had parts of it on my website. I still won't put it all up, but I can tell you this. The visions and dreams, even some of the visions and dreams I get, I won't put up. And I do want to answer one question. Please ask Steve about the Nephilim genetic markers that are upon us now and how to tell if someone is a Nephilim. Number one, you would have 6 fingers, 6 toes, and double sets of teeth, okay? You would have, and they can call it medically, polydactylism. Number 2, you would absolutely not have been able to come to Jesus because the Spirit of God only woos us. So if you're a Christian and you've come to Jesus, number 3, the one question I can't answer, if you're 20% Nephilim and 80% human, are you still salvageable? I don't know the answer to that one, but I will say this. The Bible says, and it shall come to pass that all who call upon the name of the Lord can be delivered. If your heart is smiting you, you don't have to worry about it. That means Jesus is drawing you, because no man comes unto the Father except the Son draw him, and that through the Holy Spirit. That's the best answer. It's not an evasive answer. And let me also say this. If you had outstanding Nephilim genetic markers, your genes are already in the gene bank. The whole purpose of the Human Genome Project, I said this when it first came into being 10 years ago was to identify the genetic markers of the Nephilim. I've even had people, I had Lucius Trust send me an email making sure he knew that I blasphemed the Holy Ghost. And I sent him back a loving email saying, hell spawn, enjoy eternal damnation. Okay? Unless you understand what Lucius Trust is, unless you understand what a person intentionally speaks with such vehement wickedness against the Holy Ghost, I'm sorry, but that guy's unredeemable. Or maybe that's not the correct way to say it, but he's beyond redemption. And Doug, I sent that to you.
Yeah, I saw that, and I could not believe the underlying viciousness, vile nature of those words in that email. I mean, I was offended just getting a copy of it. You know, not offended, but I could tell that. Yeah, it's just an incredible time in which we live.
So, you know, all I would say is this. If you guys hear these people, these Christians attacking me, first of all, any of you who put up my YouTubes, for the sake of those, my name is copyrighted, everything's copyrighted, so anybody that puts them up, now I don't mind, but I'd ask that you basically, what's the word where they connect that you can't post comments? You've got to know when you're...
Yeah. Disable the comments. Disable the comments, folks.
Yeah, disable the comments because people need to hear what's being said. And those of you who claim to be Christians, whether you own the boards or whatever, and have done your best to undermine me, destroy me, and everything, God will hold the blood of the innocents on your head. And those of you who were too passive, and that's why I want to thank, Aftermath Bob. I want to thank you for all the years, Bill, that you have always stood up for, me as not only my friend, but as a servant of the Lord. What's happening, Doug, is people that know nothing. It's just like this, okay? I've been in precious metals for, 35 years, and somehow I don't know anything, but people that don't know the difference between a silver dime and a wartime nickel are experts on everything, Or the people, this is my favorite. Well, I don't buy gold because the Bible says they're going to throw their gold in the street and it's going to canker. Oh, yeah? Well, read Daniel 11:38 because the Antichrist is still to come and he's going to be worshipped with gold and silver and precious stones. So the day that the gold and silver won't deliver you is in the day of the Lord. One day at the end of the tribulation when God says, my turn, he's actively involved until that time, but nothing's going to save it. And that's when these people that live in their underground, I'm talking about the Illuminati, live in their underground cities and think they got it all made, with all of their mistresses and madness. That's when the glory of the Lord will go into the deepest labyrinths of the earth. That will go to the deepest hideaways of the universe. And instantly will the Lord Jesus slay them with the breath of his mouth. Listen, God is a mighty, 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 mighty general of the hosts of heaven. When it says Lord of hosts, that literally means the captains are the generals of the armies of heaven. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you can either get right with Jesus or you can continue to be in your petty, bickering world where you could not and would not help anybody if their lives depended on it. And because of your sin, selfishness, arrogance, and pride, you will do everything to block the word of anybody who's preaching Jesus, that men might turn to Jesus and be saved. And I absolutely, Doug, by the grace of God, I know I'd better stop now because again, James says, with your tongue you bless God. I have never been more amazed at the amount of self-righteous, do-nothing, anonymous cowards that will bust that will bust my bottom, and yet they have never done anything, and they're so worried that they might be on the government's list. For those of you who live in that realm, let me tell you something. You better be worried that your name's written in the Lamb's Book of Life, because if the angels of heaven grant any man the greatest gift that I think God would give, it would be to see that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. Because if it isn't, you're in the Book of the Dead, and the Book of the Dead is the Book of the Damned.
And it's a forever book. Yeah, I'm surprised, Steve. Just assume your name is written in the in the books of man, where in the DHS or whoever is doing the monitoring at any given time. Just assume that you're already there, but be more concerned, as you say, that your book, or that your name is written in the book of life, because I think that's what we're talking about, and this was said to me exactly this way today. This is for all of the marbles. And I said that yesterday. It was said to me yesterday. This is for what we're talking about. What Steve's talking about is for all the marbles. I mean, this is the end game, is it not, Steve? I mean, this is it.
And Doug, I think you should tell the people, because again, I don't know your source, but did he not tell you that I'm telling the people the truth? And let me say something. When he's at the level he's at, he's had to have had cosmic clearance. He's had to have had, cosmic clearance. If you don't know what that is, don't give me the stuff about, well, I have top secret clearance, and my grandfather was in World War II, says Quayle's crazy. 28 steps above you, pal. Unless you know what Majestic 12 is, you can't even start in that argument. That's not meant to be proud. It's meant to put people into the realization. I didn't give you a chance to ask, did he not say that?
As if you need endorsement. Absolutely, he said that. He said that 100%, that your sources, that your information is 100% accurate. In fact, he went further and said that you probably, you could go, but people wouldn't understand, because he thinks that you've got more in your intellectually to give than you've given, and I think you've done that for the grace of people. For like you said, you can't go into the graphics, or you have chosen not to, the graphic scenes and scenarios. It's real, but yes, I mean, to answer your question, yes, absolutely. He said you're 100% accurate. That this person has that knowledge and clearance and the context himself. So no, I mean, you were 100%.
90
yes, and
seconds.
The only thing I'm trying to tell people is this. Look, I want to see faithfulness with what I've already given. There are people that absolutely have responded. Those people I share with. And when I love this. I get the anonymous email, and this is a good place to close. Tell me what you really know. Well, it's like that statement, you can't handle the truth. I have a little different spin on this. Say, what have you done with anything or all what I've already told you, And it's like
exactly.
It's like the people, the nameless people, well, the nameless people are the voices. They're just basically the VOD, VOD, okay? That's the voice of the devil. And look, I understand criticism, and I understand that there are people who are easily offended. I understand that, but Jesus even had to make this statement. Look, put me aside, but take the words I'm speaking. Go look up the scriptures, and don't settle for moron A or moron B telling you what they think, when obviously if they could think, they wouldn't be morons. That's kind of a basic maxim.
Exactly, Steve. And with that, we are up against the close of the show. I want to thank you, my friend.
10 seconds.
Genesis 6 Giants. That's Genesis, the number 6 Giants, and SteveQuayle.com. I want to thank you very much for coming on, sharing, my brother, with everything you shared tonight.
Thank you, Doug. And listen, ladies and gentlemen, my books are only available on my website. Please get Aliens and Fallen Angels and Angel Wars. They're the two books that will equip you for the most perilous time in the world that's upon us now. God bless you, everyone.
God bless you, Steve. Thank you very much, my friend.
Yeah, what a great show, and I'm glad we got through it without
Thank you for
the ability
using
to
Blog
continue.
Talk Radio. Goodbye.
I guess we can't continue. I was going to say, let's name the guest for tomorrow, but
we are out of time.
Yeah, usually it lets it run over, though, a minute or two. You know what I mean?
What the hell?
What?
I didn't disconnect. Did you disconnect from Skype?
Troy could have. But he wouldn't do it while we're in the talking. Oh, I disconnected from Skype, yeah. Not from the Blog Talk show. Let's see what kind of listenership we had tonight.
Oh,
should I name the show? Information overload. There you go. So RoboMom has a problem.
Everyone's got a problem somewhere. I'm
No, I
tired.
know.
I'm tired.
But
of
she's
this
somebody I like, so I asked her if she wanted to call me tomorrow, or I can clarify some of her problems.
But like
her frustration is out of lack of understanding of what Steve's talking about, and she sees that Steve is easily
riled up,
moved by pride and anger. And,
well, it's like I described it.
We all have
that's
problems.
what I know, but I described it like 40 years of that crap and
Right.
being poked in this back with a sharp stick while you got a migraine. And
A lot of people, though, were even questioning or rude last night, though, were different tonight, for the most part. They seem more open. Like this OD one, he is a guy who's